Well, let me ask you this to test the thought here. When you see someone who acts without thinking, someone who jumps the gun,
Yeah,
right? We tend to have a negative viewpoint of that.
I tend to have a negative viewpoint. And at the same time, I'm amazed at what they can do just from taking act. I'm thinking, God, if you had a little bit of critical, even a little bit of critical thinking in there, you could have gone way farther. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Hands on Logos podcast. This is where we discuss current events, personal growth, and any other random topic that crosses our minds. Our goal is to have a meaningful discussion that help us to see the topics we discuss more clearly. Our hope is we can help you expand your self-awareness, develop your critical thinking, and learn to be less reactive to the world around you. And most importantly, remember, be curious. If you like what you hear, like this video and subscribe to the channel. If you have any feedback, please leave a comment. We want to hear what you think. We appreciate you. Wow, Chris, hello.
Hey, Scott.
Okay, so guess what day it is, Chris? What day is it?
It is Podcast Friday.
Podcast Friday. That is awesome. Here we are again. I think this is episode number 14, if I remember.
14.
Episode 14, and it is March 7th today.
March 7th, yeah.
2025. So what are we going to talk about today?
Well, we got a lot of stuff we can talk about. Of course, critical thinking.
Yeah, of
We
course.
can talk about what this kind of campaign we want to start to get people more interactive with us. I just was writing down some stuff that I've been listening to throughout the week and some things I've done. You know, I've been playing around with AI, like just as you have, and I've been making videos and other things, trying to figure out which tools work best so we can build workflows to get to automate some of this stuff.
Yeah.
And of course, as is always on my mind and on your mind, is general health too, as we get older.
General health is a big one. Yeah, is a big one. So I want to go to health, but just the thing that's just popping up in my head right now is and I don't want to do politics, but I want to do politics. So
I think we'll end up there no matter what.
So what I'd like to talk about, and not in a political way, but I want to talk about it like more the Robert Greene rules of power. What's that other thing you were talking about? The Machiavellian stuff.
Machiavelli, yeah.
Machiavelli. And I want to talk about Trump. I mean,
Okay.
Trump, I mean, there are people that are just, that they'll do anything he says. I mean, how is an individual, because he's 78 years old, right? So how does somebody like a Trump amass so much power?
And you're saying because he has blind followers or because he has the majority of people behind him?
Well, I don't, well, the majority of people voted for him.
The majority of people voted for him. He's giving the public a lot of things that they want to see.
Yeah, a lot of activity happening.
Which is keeping them generally happy. I think he's got pretty good approval ratings overall. So is that the power you mean, or more like going along the lines of the blind followers, the true Trumpers out there?
I don't want to talk about them necessarily. I guess okay, here's what it is. Here's what I'm thinking about. I guess I want to talk about application. Because the problem is we talk about logic and critical thinking, and the problem is even with all the logic and critical thinking in the world, it's still possible not to get anything done. And at some point,
it's very easy not to get anything done. Your analysis paralysis comes into play. The idea of talking makes you think like you're getting something done. Because it's the first step of getting something done, but you know, that's why the ready fire aim is so important, because it's hard to fire. It's hard to actually move.
Yeah. So I guess I want to talk about that a little bit, because it's not that, it's like, it's not just critical thinking. I mean, critical thinking is very important, but taking action is very important too. And I guess I want to know, or I want to discuss more of a personal thing. How can I get myself to take action? And is critical thinking a part of that, or can it be used to take action? Or can it be totally distracting at times, because all you're doing is trying to, let's just think about it, and not get anything done?
Well, let me ask you this to test the thought here. when you see someone who acts without thinking, someone who jumps the gun,
Yeah.
right? We tend to have a negative viewpoint of that.
I tend to have a negative viewpoint. And at the same time, I'm amazed at what they can do just from taking I'm thinking, God, if you had a little bit of critical, even a little bit of critical thinking in there, you could have gone way farther, you know? And for
So
instance, Trump, I want to bring Trump back in it. I don't think Trump's the smartest guy in the world, that's for sure, actually. But he's getting all the stuff.
he probably says he is, but
Of
yeah, I
course,
agree with you.
he's of course. Um, and so, I mean, what could we learn from Trump? And I know everybody's going to like get freaked out on politics. If you can, and this is a big point. This can I make a big point actually? And I do this all the time too. Is that if you bring up Trump, half the people are going to hate you, and they're just going to, and they just because they hate him. And I'm like, you've got to somehow separate the person from the idea.
Well, it's not just the person from the idea. I think it's in this case the thing is the person with the emotional attachments you've tied to it, the preconceptions, the um, associations, right? So
Yeah.
someone has built an association, positive or negative, with the word Trump, with the person of Trump.
Yeah.
And
Right.
so if you bring up Trump, the listener will automatically go one way or the other based upon the associations they've already built. So the
Yeah.
concept of being able to stand back and look at him in an analytical way is tough for a lot of people because he is one of those people that very few people are ambivalent about him. They either like him or they don't like
Oh
him. They're
yeah.
either
Yeah.
for
He's
him or
very
they're against
polarizing,
him.
right?
So
Yeah.
because of that, the idea of the bulk of people just being able to go, I don't know, maybe, is tough. And I think there's a lot of ideas that are that way. I think that's what happened with wokeism. That's what happened with a lot of other things that are out there that are very touchy subjects because people hear it and they think, oh, you're you're saying something that's against what I believe or what I think, and therefore you're all the negative things about that I can come up with that go with that.
Yeah. Yeah. And that can be really dangerous because you can
It
miss
most
out.
definitely is, and it's being weaponized against people.
Yeah.
Again, what did we talk about last time? The idea of critical thinking has those different levels,
Yeah.
and for you to have an opinion, you've got to have gone through these other levels. And what we've done is we've shortcutted people's need to go through those levels because we just give them an opinion and say, yeah, we've done the research on it. And if you trust me, then you don't have to do the research. And suddenly
Yeah.
you don't know why, but you have an opinion,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
That's interesting. And somehow I don't want to get too technical, too critical thinking. I mean, ideally, what I want is I'm doing this, I want this conversation for myself to extend, and I'm sure other people will be helpful, is how do I get myself to take more action? Because the excuse always is for me, always is the same excuse. Well, I don't want to rush out. I want to do anything crazy. Let's just do a little more research. Let's think about this, because I might make a mistake. So it's best just to not move right now.
Well, so what's going to work on you? Is it going to be an argument that explains the value of acting, or is it going to be something else? Because we can argue. I think we can argue that it's better to act, at least for us at the state of life we're in the amount of thought we've put into things. We've done a lot of thinking on stuff.
Yeah, I think that it can do too much thinking and you can do too little thinking. Like for instance, when I was trained to be a pilot, right, a long time ago, when I was 18 years old, actually. I mean, you have a checklist. You check things like, oh, you got to check the oil and make sure you got some gas, and just these basic checks or whatever like that. But if you think about it too much, you'll never take off, right? So there's some spot when it's like, okay, we know enough, and we're never going to get to 100% certainty, but we know enough to move forward.
So I'm going to challenge you back and say you've probably spent the bulk of your life overthinking things.
Oh my God, of course, I get it
I
all the
have
time.
as well. That's
Yeah,
our character. We don't do. So let's look at the balance of our life.
yeah.
Over the course of your life, you should think a certain amount about things. We've already done all our thinking. So at this point in our life, we should balance it out by doing less thinking.
Well, I
We
wouldn't.
should act faster.
Well, I tell you, I think you're not far off on that. Normally, I would jump on you, but I think you might be right this time because I think it's not the thinking, but it's the quality of the thinking and the duration of the thinking. Because I know for me, I'll tend to ruminate. I'll just go over and over and over the same thing. And I think at some point, as long as you're thinking you're getting new data and you're learning something new, I think it's fine to wait. But there's a point when it's like, look, I know enough, and I'm never going to know with 100% certainty. I'm never going to know with 100% certainty.
Yeah, so the company I used to work for loved to talk
Yeah.
and talk so much that the work didn't get done.
Yeah, that's a problem. Yeah.
Right? Because everyone's got an opinion, and oh, if we do it this way, what about that 20% outlier, the 10% outlier? What about that one weird situation where this happens and that happens? And pretty soon you've talked yourself into circles, and then you've expanded the scope of whatever you're working on to be 10 times the amount of effort it was before,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So what one of the things that our IT department, who was just as guilty of it as everyone else, but the IT department tried to do is they tried to use time bound sets. They would bound the amount of effort in time, the amount of thinking in time. So
That's not
you've got
unreasonable.
a day to think about this,
Okay.
and you're
Yeah.
acting tomorrow. You've got a week. You've got 7 hours. You got this meeting to get through this, and whatever comes out of it, that's what we're going with. That doesn't mean it's locked in stone and you can never change it, but we
Right.
need
Of
a
course.
decision to be able to make it to move. And I think that's the problem that like my schedule is so fluffy and I can move things around so much that I
Yeah.
think what ends up happening is I can just push that to tomorrow. I can just push that to tomorrow.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
since there's no end action that I've got going, it'll be a week gone, and I'm like, oh, I could have done that on Monday. It's a Friday already.
Yeah. 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 No, that's exactly right. And I think, I know we had Shelley on last week talk about frameworks, and I know we may not agree on the definition of a framework, but when I came away from that, I'm going to just high level this thing. A framework is just a way of thinking about something that's a structure, just like Jamar in Toastmasters loves his 3-point speeches. But
Mm-hmm.
that's a darn nice framework. I mean, that will work in a lot of particular
It's the
cases.
one that Toastmasters teaches you from day one, right? It's
Yeah.
yeah. Tell you what I'm going to tell you, tell it to you, and told you what I told you. Oh,
Yeah.
and let me just use and let me keep it down 3 to 5 points at the most, right?
Yeah.
And recap it at the end and try to make it memorable.
And you can do, if you were to get really good at the execution of that and really good at the framework, you would be a formidable opponent, speaker. I mean, if you were really good at that.
I was actually thinking it would be really good. I think the three is fine. I think if you could get to 1 point, so you do the 1 minute speech and you get the 1 point, you do
Yeah.
the 5 minute speech, you get the 3 points, and then you do like the 10 minute speech, you get like the 5 points. But and you go layers deeper. But it's like I've got a minute to tell you something important that I've been thinking through. Here's what it is, and here's what I'm going to tell you. Why I'm telling I'll tell you what it is, and then I'll tell you what it was, and through that you're going to get understand what the impact of it is and why it's important, right?
Yeah.
I could see you doing like I said, a 1 point, a 3 point, a 5 point, and the idea being that each one has more detail, but you adjust it based upon your time limit and your audience.
Well, and I like that. In fact, there's something like in my evaluation today, I was thinking I didn't do it of Jamar.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking, like, what is just one thing? If there's just one thing I could summarize, if you could just do this one thing, that would take you to the next level, actually. I give
Mm-hmm.
10 things. The problem is 10 things can be overwhelming, as opposed to just, this is the one thing you did right, and this is the one thing I want you to improve on for next time. And let me tell you something, man. If you do that week after week after week in a year, you're going to get really, really good,
So so now what we're talking now is a framework to approach all this, right? So
Yes, yeah,
basically, it's like I don't I default to giving you all the information
yeah,
so that you can make the decision.
yeah,
But if you don't want to make the decision because you don't want to put the mental effort into it or whatnot, then
yeah,
the best value I can give you is to do the mental work on my side and then tell you specifically which one you should do. Right? I
yeah,
can say,
yeah.
hey, here's 5 things that you should do, and you're gonna go, okay, great. And now I've got to figure out which of the five I'm gonna work on
I know.
this week and how I'm gonna do it. Instead I go, hey, here's the one thing I think you need to work on, and
Yeah,
here's one way you might try working on it.
yeah. And
If
that's
you want to know
powerful.
the other four things that occurred to me, come talk to me after you've done the one thing.
Yeah, yeah, because all your ideas are not equal.
No,
Every idea is not there might be one that might be 100 times more
but
valuable than
you know how
all.
hard it is, right? Someone says if you can't explain it, yeah, if you can't explain it yourself, you can't teach it. You can't bring it down to a minimal level. If you can't explain it in 2 sentences, you don't know it well enough.
That's absolutely true, actually. Yes.
But when you're taking an extremely complex idea, getting comfortable, and you are the expert. You know the details.
Yeah.
Stripping out the details, which are your forte,
Yeah.
to get down to a simplified idea, that's a tough thing to ask of someone. There's ego involved. There's decision making involved, and that is a critical skill that I think your really good communicators have. The ability to take a complex idea, explain it with enough nuance, but in a
Yeah.
simple way that someone who has no idea what they're talking about comes away thinking they understand it.
Yeah. Yeah. That or at least and that can take action on it. There's an
And
actionable.
so in this case, what we're saying is we need to make the effort to, instead of just throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks, we should say this is the one thing you need to get to stick today.
Yeah. 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 That's exactly right. So there was, I have so many different stories that I could tell about this. Um, so I'm taking this Navy SEAL guy's class. His name is Eric Davis. And there's a concept in here called prioritize by power. Or it's a concept of the one thing. They have people have tons of different ways to express, but it's if I do this one thing, what's the one thing that'll make everything else like basically not required or easier to do? And to some extent, it's kind of a root cause analysis, right? Without going too far, it's like just what's the one thing. So we've been talking about a little bit offline. I think this is maybe the first time we're going to bring it up. Is about health and our diabetes and thinking clearly. And I know for me, if I just did two things, only eat good quality food that's measured, that's so I don't go crazy, which I always want to do, and get a little exercise, right? Because we were talking today about your running and your knee hurting and everything like that. And my thought was, man, just walk then. Just walk. Walking's good. Walking's really good. I mean, you could walk for a year and do no running, and you'd be in probably a much better place than you are right now.
I think I told you beginning of last year, we did a lot of road trips to national parks. And we would go and hike 4, 6 hours, 8 hours in a national park, and
Yeah.
then come back to the hotel and crash because you'd be exhausted.
Yeah. Right.
But that did so much to controlling my blood sugar, to
Yeah.
controlling other aspects of what I was doing. It made me tired. It made me sleep better, right?
Yeah. Right.
It I was also eating low carb at the time, so I was cutting out a lot of the bread and the pasta and the rice. In fact, almost all of that.
Yeah.
Almost all the carbs I had were from vegetables.
Yeah.
And since we were living in hotel rooms or on the road, we bought stuff that didn't require me to cook it, which meant I was eating mostly
Yeah.
raw vegetables.
Yeah. Yeah. You
And so when you
simple.
think about that, raw vegetables, meat, cheese, a little dairy, whatever, when you think about it from that aspect, that and the activity really brought things down a lot. In fact, my medication went down after that because the blood sugar had gone down so much.
Yeah.
And I think that is one thing that we just don't move enough. I
We
think
don't move.
movement is itself, your body your muscles pull the glucose out of your blood when you're exercising,
Yeah.
and it eats it up. So it doesn't get down to your liver. It doesn't get down to other places. So
Yeah.
really, that's a huge way to be able to pull the glucose out of your system, is to have the muscles use your muscles.
Yeah. Use your muscles. We're not designed to sit on the couch all the time. I mean,
No.
we're designed to move. We're designed to work, right? Yeah. And I think that's critical because and that's tremendously hard work to do, to strip down something to the root cause or strip something down to its essence and discard everything else that's not important. Well, I don't want to say that because it could be important, but it's like there's typically just one or two things that if you just do, and it seems, and another thing, Chris, is that I think it's really important to distinguish between, there's a difference between simple and easy. It might be really simple, but it may not be easy to execute.
Simple is never easy. Easy is one thing, simple something else. People think it's simple, therefore it is easy. But that's like saying vanilla is the most boring flavor. It's actually one of the most complex flavors.
Yeah.
It's just one of the more standard boring choices, maybe.
Or standard. Yeah, we're familiar with it. Yeah. I know I had a coach one time. He used to be a roofing contractor. He was an interesting guy. And he basically said, listen to me, doing a hot tar roof on a building in the middle of summer is an incredibly simple process, but it's not easy. And I'm like, but sometimes and sometimes in my mind, I'm always looking for the shortcut. I'm thinking, oh, if I just think this through, if I just get the right answer, then I'm going to have the easy button. I'll get my result. And sometimes it's not easy.
But sometimes that's true, right? I mean, there is a level where if you just put in a little more thought, you wouldn't have made that wrong turn on
Yeah.
the road. If you'd sat down and looked at a map and figured out, oh, I got to turn right here, maybe when you got to that intersection, you would have known, right? And you can argue you can have your GPS or whatever, but the idea being, if you took a moment to understand that, life would be a little bit easier for you.
Life would
If
be a
you
little,
understood the return policy or the refund policy of booking a hotel, then you would understand when it came time for you to make changes at the last minute. It's not, and none of those are going to kill you. I mean, we're not in a situation where it's life threatening, but
yeah.
yeah, a little effort may have saved you time there or made it a little, but at what point are you over examining? At what point
Well,
is it, oh, you made the wrong turn. Okay, you wasted 20 minutes because you made a wrong turn. You got to go back.
Well, I know for me, and I would expect for a lot of other people, I tend to keep thinking because I know what the answer is. I just don't like the answer and I don't want to do the answer. So I keep thinking, okay, maybe there's another way. Maybe there's another way. There's got to be some cheat. There's got to be something that will give me this outcome without having to work very hard. And I think for me, that's where it is.
And so maybe this is it too, because I've been trying to figure out how to get the an AI automation set up to create social media posts without me actually having to write social media posts,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah,
It's that's I think conceptually I can do it.
yeah,
But one thing that occurs to me is I don't write a lot of social media posts. Maybe the first thing I should do is start writing some social media posts
yeah,
just to do it.
yeah,
So
yeah.
that what I end up doing is automating something I know like the back of my hand, as opposed to automating something that I theoretically know.
Oh my gosh, always, always. That's always been my thought. Is like, listen. In fact, I think we've talked about this offline. It's like, listen, Chris. I don't even care about the automation. I don't care how much time it takes right now. We just got to figure out how to do it, and then how to optimize the process. And then once we know what to do, now we can automate. But if you try to automate it first, it's like you don't know what
But
you don't.
maybe that's the approach you need to take when you're thinking this is hard. I don't want to do it. I need a shortcut.
Yeah,
Maybe the thought is I got to do it first and get good at it so that I
yeah,
can find the shortcut.
are good
Right?
enough, right?
So
Exactly.
switch the mindset to like accept the fact that you got to do the hard thing before you can make it easy.
Yeah, yeah. And remember when we first started this podcast? We've been talking about doing this for probably what, like, I don't know. I don't know. You can correct me because I don't know. I'm just making up numbers, but 6 months to a year before we actually did it. We were kind of chit
Yeah,
chatting about it.
yeah.
And I think at some point I just got to burr up my butt. We were talking on Zoom and I'm like, Chris, I'm just hitting the freaking record button right now. I'm hitting the record button.
It was that towards the end of last year, I was getting in that mode where I just find myself on YouTube way too much, either
Hmm.
doom scrolling or going down rabbit holes, and I was like, I'm watching so much, but I'm not using what I'm learning. I'm not creating anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm consuming but not creating.
And that's the symptom. Maybe that's the symptom. If you find yourself in that place on the couch, stuffing your face with Cheetos and just doom scrolling on YouTube, we're not, that'll create a very depressed human being because we're not made to do that. We're made to have a goal and an objective, and then we want to see some kind of progress to that goal.
So
Then we get,
I was talking to a woman last night. There was a mixer at a local store that I was invited to, so I went to it. It was a big event, like 300 people showed up to this
oh, wow.
little store basically, and
Yeah.
it was still raining a little bit outside, so the weather wasn't great. But I was talking to her, and we were talking about how hard it is to get out and do things, even though
Yeah.
you know you need to, right? Be that exercise, be that something you need to do for work or the like. It's so easy to go home and watch TV or use ChatGPT or whatever to
Yeah.
just waste your time.
Yeah.
And yeah, so we were tying it to the fact of what's it doing to the social fabric of
Yeah.
of society. That's
Yeah.
where we had gone to in the conversation. But the idea that you don't need people anymore. You've got social media, which means you interact with people kind of, sort
Yeah.
of, a little bit, but you're missing the visual cues, you're missing the body language, you're missing so much of that in those interactions,
Yeah.
which is why people get offended so much, because if you heard the person say the thing that's on the social media post,
Yeah.
you might realize, oh, there was nothing offensive there was nothing to be offended at.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's I mean, there's a term drama queen, right? I think In order to eliminate the boredom, it's like we create drama intentionally to get some dopamine going on in our head. And then you start feeling self-righteous. Yeah, I'm doing something good and I'm trying to correct
Is
this.
that where the whole thing with the Karens that came out during the pandemic was that they
I
were drama
think
queens?
so. I think so. I mean, and they're so sure that they're so right, and they're feeling good. They're getting their dopamine released because I'm doing something good. But really, I mean,
Anytime you feel sure that you're in the right, you need to shut up.
pretty much, pretty
Anytime you feel that you are in the right, shut up.
pretty much,
Take a
yeah,
moment, take a breath, count to 10, and try to see some other viewpoint just to
yeah.
make sure. If it comes out you were in the right, great. But if you
And you
start
might be,
feeling
yeah,
like it, that's a there's a distinction there. Oh, yeah, you're getting your emotions mixed up with your logic.
yeah, exactly, exactly right, yeah, yeah. And that's what jujitsu does. I know I've said this 8,000 times before, but that's what jujitsu does. It puts you in a stressful position with a technique with another human being, and it just takes months and months and months just to work through that fear and the ego and the pride. Where you're like, look, I just need to do this technique, right? I'm not strong enough. I just don't really understand this technique, and it's my fault. It's not the because first of all, you want to blame the technique. Oh, if only this technique was better, then I could do it. It's like, no, the technique's fine, right? There's tens of thousands of other people that are executing this technique just perfectly. It's
Mhm.
your problem, not somebody else's. And that's an inherent thing in our society too. We just want to blame something else other than pointing the finger at, yeah, I messed up. That was my fault.
But so let's follow that for a moment, right? The idea that we don't want to be blamed for stuff, so we blame everyone else. Is this tied to a fear of failing and falling short? Because
Oh yeah.
it seems to me the way society was when our life was on the line a lot more in centuries past, right? When you were hunting and gathering and
Yeah.
or going to war or all the things that we haven't had to do in the past 70 years, basically. When you think about that, failure was something that what you knew would happen. And so the idea was to get stronger to face those big
Yeah.
obstacles, you had to fail small now
Yeah.
at a time when it wouldn't kill you.
Yeah.
And it seems like because all those big, scary, deadly things are gone out of our lives,
Yeah.
we don't need those small failures anymore. And so the character building aspects of those small failures have disappeared. So the concept of,
That makes sense.
you'll hear, yeah, why aren't people getting married and having kids and all that, all the like? They're not meeting each other. Why aren't they meeting each other? Because they don't want to take the risk. And I'm like, that wouldn't have been acceptable in times past. Why is that acceptable today?
Well, no, and I know, especially for younger people, I've heard Jordan Peterson talk about this, is that they they just don't want to put the work in to go out and try to get a woman and try to get laid. They're like, oh, that's too much work. I'll just watch porn instead.
They don't want to put the work in, but why don't they want to put the work in?
Because they could get rejected. It's scary. You're not
And why is that scary? I go back to because they're afraid to fail, and
they're afraid to fail. Yeah,
because we built a society that's afraid to fail. So when you hear like companies that say they fail fast, it's like
yeah,
they've accepted the fact that they're going to fail and they're going to build off it as quickly as possible, right?
yeah.
Fail fast.
Right.
And even things like agile and some of the other methodologies that are out there are really about the idea of build it, build it, break it, make it better
Yeah,
at the end of the day.
yeah,
And
yeah,
that approach is something that I think people did in life. That was part of how you grew. You
yeah,
took a test, you failed the test, it drove you to try harder to pass the test next time.
yeah,
And now it's like, I don't want to try that because what happens if I fail? I don't want to try to do that thing.
yeah.
I'm like, no,
Exactly.
the point is to try and fail.
No, and exactly. And the growth happens getting up off the ground. That's where the growth happens. Not
Yes.
the falling down. It's like, okay, let me try again. What did I do wrong? Now, in that particular case, you do need a little bit of critical thinking. Say, hey, what happened? Right? Why did I fail? It's like, okay, should I went right, I should have went left. Okay, let's try again. Let's try again. And usually
Well,
for
so,
me,
so, so, so we can quote is was it Einstein who said insanity is doing the
yeah,
same thing over and expecting the different results?
yeah, that is kind of insanity. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So I mean,
And
the idea here is you need to recognize that you need to change something, right?
and let me go back to porn for a second, actually, because
Okay.
porn is devastating for people. Because I don't want to take the risk of acting an actual woman out. I don't actually want to try to engage her for sex because I may get rejected. I may get embarrassed. It's hard work. So, in my house, I'll just go surf some porn and I'll just take care of my need. I'll get my dopamine hit and I'm good, right? But you're not good because you do that for a long enough time, you're in big trouble, It's
So
literally destroying your brain is what's
I think
happening.
I may have told you this. My dad was telling me that in when he was in the service, and he was in, I think it was Korea at the time. The whatever Friday night when all the guys would go out to the bar or whatever, some of the guys would take care of their needs before they went out,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
Right.
And so they wouldn't get stressed out when they were meeting the girls or the like when they're
So
out
they don't
there.
get
But they
desperate.
got so used to doing that that's the main thing they look forward to.
I know.
Not
It's,
the actual meeting of people, but taking care of those needs on their own. And I think I remember him saying that it stuck with my mind because it seemed to me that that's exactly what porn is.
oh my gosh, yeah, it's easy street. It's sugar. It's eating carbs instead of it's it's yeah, it's taking the easy way out instead of actually doing the work. And in the short term, you get a lot of pleasure really quickly, but it's not earned. It's like a different kind of pleasure. And at your heart, and deep inside, I cheated this one. I didn't really do this. I it's a cheat.
Is that okay? The concept of earning something, earning the
Yeah.
right to do this, earning this.
Earning your dopamine, yes, by building something or doing something.
I think this way too. Do others, do other generations think this way? And I'm
Well,
wondering,
certainly not the younger ones because they've had it so easy, right?
and I'm wondering, are we are we still right to think this way?
Well, according to Jordan Peterson, which I tend to, he seems like a pretty smart guy. It's like when things get too easy in a society, we start getting hedonistic and society fails.
But this concept that you need to earn something, right? So like if something comes too easy to you, it feels like you didn't earn it. At least for me, right? If something just fell in your lap and go, oh, I didn't earn that, right? And it feels wrong if you don't think you did the work to go into it.
Well, but
So
it
then
depends if you did the work or not. And I think that'd be pretty easy case by case to see if you actually did the work or not.
I think part of it may be redefining what you did in the past that actually counts as work towards this, right? If you went out and if a job landed in your lap, because you had gone out and network with people, and you may have thought that, oh, I wasn't networking, I was just having fun or whatever. It's still work, right? I
But you
think
still
maybe
did the work.
part of that's the definition. I think
Yeah.
the other thing though is those things that you did to that count as work probably were not ultra easy. They probably were a little bit hard. They had challenges to them. And
Yeah.
so you
Yeah.
recognize these are the things that I built off of that made this available. And it's those things that are a little bit hard that people don't want to do.
Well, and I will tell you personally that when I do something hard, and it's like the more I struggle, and when you finally do your thing, when you finally get whatever it is that you're getting, that's like a way better reward than this cheating kind of stuff, like eating sugar or porn or whatever else you kind of do. It's like, it's like you just know at your core, like, yeah, I did the right thing. There's like a
Well,
pride to it that
I
comes.
guess the idea though is the idea that someday we'll have little wires going into the pleasure sensors of our brain and we'll just be able to trigger pleasure by hitting the button.
Yeah, have you seen the rise of sex robots? I mean,
The what?
it's the sex robots. I mean, it's like a common thing. You just go search Google sex robots, and there's like
Oh,
so many people not having because they're like, why do I want a relationship? I just get a sex robot.
but I mean, this was, oh gosh, Heinlein wrote this in one of his books back in the 50s, right? And basically, there were these people who they just got addicted to the pleasure, and they would just sit there and constantly hit the pleasure button
Oh, I
all
read
day
that
long.
book. Yes, 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 yes. It was like some like thing up in orbit put a shield over them or whatever, and the one guy like finally maybe that's another book or whatever, but they were addicted to pleasure.
Yeah, well, in this case, the one guy they needed help from who was a scientist, but he was also addicted to pleasure, so they had a hard time getting information out of him. But the conceptually, the idea that if you have an easy way to seek pleasure, you're
Yeah,
not going to go after the long term
yeah,
pleasure center, right?
right,
Is it
right.
serotonin and what's the other one?
I don't know, serotonin, dopamine. There's like a
Dopamine. Yeah,
handful.
dopamine's the quick hit, and serotonin's the long one or whatever. So
And then, yeah, then
serotonin
there's
is what you feel
another
when
one.
you accomplish something hard, and dopamine is when you get something quick. So.
Yeah, yeah. It's like, and I call it like a cheat. It's like sugar. It's like a cheat,
Hmm.
actually.
But this is why fruits and vegetables in the past were not that sweet. It was always
No, they
hard to get
weren't.
fruits.
No,
They
yeah,
only grew in certain times of the year. You
yeah,
could not get you could not easily get fat eating that until you started to have built societies where you could use the
yeah,
work of others and live off of the work of others, and
yeah,
then you were able to do that.
yeah,
But
yeah. And
yeah,
then the common theme is, well, then we're exploiting people in other countries that deliver this stuff for us, and it's like, in some ways that's kind of true. I mean, we kind of are exploiting them in a certain way.
I get your comment. I don't know how you were tying it to this, to the idea of cheats though.
Because they're doing stuff for us. That's a lot of work. They're not getting paid a lot of money for it. So we're getting the pleasure, the benefit of that without having to actually do the work. And we got to be careful because it's not 100% true, but there's a certain amount of truth to it. It's like, even where I am, I'm in like Podunk, Arkansas, right? It's like I can go to the local Walmart or another grocery store and I can get pretty much any fruit, anytime, anything I want. And if it's not looking beautiful and perfect, I bitch like crazy. In the middle of January, when it's freezing and snow on the ground, if I don't get my watermelon and my grapes and my apples that look beautiful, I get pissed. Because I feel like I deserve to have whatever I want whenever I want it.
So, see, when you started talking about taking advantage of other societies and other people's, what was coming across to my mind was we're actually damaging ourselves, right? So our health goes down because of this. Our
Yeah.
addiction to the dopamine and the quick hit that's getting in the way of social performance and what's going on with
Yeah, we become addicted to
society.
it. Right. Right.
So I'm wondering if it all balances out. Yeah, we're taking advantage of other people, but they're healthier than we are because they're the
Well,
ones doing the work.
it's of course. It's like, it could be. It could be actually. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you think about it. This is what this is what's killing the world economy. Where countries are printing money without doing the work to make the money.
Yeah.
Right? The idea of gold and why gold had value was you had to go mine the gold. You had to go
Yeah, right.
dig. You had to refine it. And so there was work. There was actual effort that went into making that ounce of gold.
Hard
And
work.
therefore, it had value no matter who had it because someone put in work to get that gold out of the ground.
Yeah, right, right,
Who
exactly.
puts in the work to create $1 trillion on a spreadsheet? They just put in a couple extra zeros and you got more money.
Now it just poofed into
Right?
existence.
And
Yeah.
so now there's no work is added to the economy to compensate for that. So basically, you took the work that was in the economy and you spread it out across more dollars, which
Yeah.
means you've deflated, you've devalued the currency.
And so
And
it's
that's
not,
that's
yeah,
the one thing that it seems like every country does now. The gold standard, going off the gold standard may have been the last nail in the coffin, but the idea here being that our our money is no longer backed by work that went into it.
yeah. Because it's like I don't think it's sustainable long term, right?
It's
Which
not.
I think it's why Jordan Peterson says eventually that society will collapse.
But yeah, unfortunately, it's not just our society. It's the world societies because this is how the world has been getting by is just making more money, printing more money.
Yeah, to some extent. I mean, we still have to produce, and we still have to create. I mean, the
Yeah, and,
GDP
and we
growth.
produce more, we create more, we're more efficient. It's amazing the stuff that we produce, and
Yeah,
that's going on while all this devalued currency is out there,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So I think one question to ask, is could we have grown as quickly and as large as we did and have the lifestyle we have today without printing money?
Oh
I'm
no,
wondering if they go hand in hand, actually.
yeah. The money thing is critical. That's just a unit of exchange. That's a commodity. That
But it's an availability, right? The availability of dollars is what helps you develop and invest and create things, right? So
yeah,
when
right.
there's more money out there, people are much more willing to spend it freely.
Yeah, 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 yeah. AKA credit cards, right?
Yep.
Free money. I know. I just got my balance got increased from like 7,000 to like 12,000 or something like that. And the email I got was amazing because what it said was basically, "Oh, you deserve this," right? And then it listed a bunch of offers where I could like get some pleasure quickly. Actually, until you get the bill, then it's not so fun
So
anymore.
I periodically ask them to raise my limits, but I never spend that much.
Yeah,
Right? I don't like to put stuff on the credit card. So,
yeah,
but I periodically, just to help my credit rating, I will go out there and say, "Okay, can you up it?"
Yeah.
And anymore, they don't bother to say yes anymore because I just don't spend anywhere near the limit.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. So I mean, we live in this culture where pleasure is first. And I think it kind of maybe started in the 60s, right? Where everything's like, oh, let's just sit around and free love and let's just smoke dope and we're going to change the world. It's like, no, no, you're not actually by doing that.
Did it start in the 60s? When?
That's in my mind. That's when it started. I mean, in the 50s,
Well,
people were.
let's go back. World War II ended, and the United States did not build the empire that every other country had done beforehand. And we said, all right, you're going to become part of our economic engine, and
Yeah.
we'll protect you. And anyone who doesn't fit in this engine and doesn't play fair, we're going to go hurt you.
Yeah. Right.
And we did that for 50, 60 years,
Yeah.
up until the point where the Berlin Wall fell and Russia, our enemy, or USSR, our enemy, fell apart.
Yeah. Right.
And then I think we spent the last, 20, 30 years kind of coming down from that.
Yeah. Right.
Right. U.S.
Right.
is no longer wanting to be in that role of the caretaker of the world.
Yeah.
You can see how, with Trump approaches it by battering at NATO. But
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah.
also, I heard a guy who was obviously pretty left leaning address the UN this
Yeah.
week. I think it was. I forgot his name. I should know it anyway. And he addressed him. And he went on and gave the whole history about why Russia attacked Ukraine. And he
Okay.
was talking about how there was talk, Ukraine wanted to join NATO for a long time, and we said no.
Yeah. Of course.
And
Yeah.
no, we're
Yeah.
not, right? Because people understood that was a threat to Russia.
Yeah.
And then,
Obama,
during the
Clinton.
Biden administration, I guess they were saying, well, yeah, of course you can join. And so suddenly, this thing that was keeping a buffer between NATO and Russia, and was there. And then the other thing he brought forth was that so much of what NATO does, internal to the mind of people, is tied to Europe.
Yeah.
NATO equals Europe in so many minds, and really it isn't. It's a trade organization, treaty organization for if you get attacked.
Yeah. North
And yet,
America Treaty.
North Atlantic
Yeah.
Treaty Organization. Anyway, the idea here being that it was there to protect against Russia. Russia was gone and has been for a long time.
Yeah.
Why do
Right.
you need NATO anymore? That was the argument that you've heard so many times. But he was building the case as to why basically Putin was pushed into doing something.
Yeah. Was that the guy, the CIA guy, right? Was that the
No,
one?
no, 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 no.
There's another guy that's really good. He's a great storyteller too, so I love watching him.
So I was listening to this guy, and I'm trying to, you know, he's on the left side of things in his conversation.
Okay. Yeah.
He's spouting out enough facts that I'm like going, okay, I've heard that Putin was pushed into this, but
And that's about the story I heard. The same story, right? Because
Yeah.
he basically said no, and I think Obama said no, and a couple of presidents said no, we're not going to let you join NATO. And then the promise was, well, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're not going to just put a NATO country up against your border then. And then everybody's okay, we're fine then. And then we did it anyways. And so,
Yeah.
I mean, I know everybody thinks Russia is so bad, and they freaking are, right? I mean, Russia's not a good guy, but we're not the super good guy either, right?
Although he painted this picture of all the bad things that the U.S. has done in the past 70, 80 years, and I honestly, a lot of it I knew of.
Yeah.
But it was before I was born. A lot of it, right? The 50s and the 60s were a time frame when a lot of this stuff happened.
Yeah.
The question is, what's happened what happened in the 80s, the 90s, and the aughts, and the like. And I don't know. I don't know that we know all those things.
No, it'll come out eventually. But it's interesting though. But I do want to come back to the individual because I don't really care what the country does. I'm more concerned about what I do and how do I get myself to do something that I want to do. And it's crazy.
Well, I think again, I think in our case, we need to stop thinking.
Well, hang on. I don't want to say stop because I think thinking is important, but we do need to limit. I think we need to limit our time and maybe increase the quality of our thinking.
So
right?
Let's go to the Mel Robbins 5-second rule,
5-second
or whatever,
rule,
right?
Yeah.
You get 5 seconds to think.
Well, come on, I need more than 5 seconds.
No. You've already done so much thinking in the back of your head. You've got your value structure. You know within 5 seconds what you need to do.
Is that true? Hang on a second. I want to argue about that.
Okay.
Hang on. Do I want to argue about that? I mean, I think here's what I'm gonna agree to. I think in the vast bulk of cases that's true, but it's not in every case because there's certain times okay, so like for instance, I don't know if you can see, like there, I have a CNC machine over there
I
that's
see
been
the
in
edge
my
of it.
garage
Yeah, yeah,
for
I
like
see it.
3 years, right? And I'm figuring out I got to learn how to use this thing. And there's times, but I'm afraid to turn it on because if you do something wrong, you can crash it and it could potentially create thousands of dollars of damage, right? So there's
Hmm.
been a fear about that. So I'm blocked by fear and I'm confused about how to do certain things and set things up. So in that particular case, I do need more thinking because I truly do not know. So but at some point, and I've been telling myself at some point, hey man, you got to put some metal in there and you got to hit the go button at some point, and it may crash. And if
No
it
one's going to be able to tell you with 100% certainty that you're not going to screw it up.
no, and I've got to take and just know that there's gonna be some mistakes happen along the way, and just
I think
hopefully
I
let just
think the idea though is once you're in motion, almost everything that goes wrong you can correct for,
I think
right?
so.
And so and I believe that, but I also believe that if I'd spent 5 extra seconds in the front end, I could have avoided that issue.
Yeah, yeah,
So overcoming that bias towards stopping and trying to figure out all the problems ahead of time, I personally need to move and then adjust when I find out I did the wrong thing.
yeah. And I think you need to know though. If you feel fear, and if you can really say, "Look, I'm afraid," right? That's the problem. I think, but I have enough data. I think in that case, you got to move. But you don't want to just be stupid either, right? There's a balance, and it's important to get it right.
So when you're standing in front of the fridge and you want that bite of ice cream,
Yeah, or whatever
you
it
can
is.
reach for the ice cream or you can reach for, I don't know, whatever, an apple or whatever you've got in there. Yeah, it's sweet. It's not going to give you quite the same sugar rush, but
Yeah, right.
it's a sweet
Sweet
thing,
enough. Yeah.
right? You know what you need to do. There's no
No,
question that
there's
it's the
question,
right
but
thing
I
to do,
don't want to
right?
do it, right?
Yeah. So you don't even try to rationalize it because you can always find a way to rationalize any damn thing
Oh,
you
of
want.
course, of course, of course. Actually,
So
and
don't
I'm
even
good.
try to rationalize it. Just say I'm acting, and I'm going to act, and I'm going to do the thing that I know I should do.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
and I can caveat the hell out of it if I spend time on it. I can talk myself out of doing the right thing,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, yeah,
right? I
yeah.
I also wonder. Okay, so now we're going to go slightly different, but I also wonder how that ties to doing the right thing ethically. I get the feeling we know what the right thing is in almost every situation. Rarely are you going to have that one thing where you're on the track and you're going to hit the 10 people, or
Yeah,
you
yeah.
move the train
Usually,
to the other track and you kill the
yeah,
one person, right? The trolley problem. Rarely are you going to be in a situation where it's like that,
yeah,
right? It's really going to be in a right and a wrong thing. Oh,
yeah.
I found a wallet. Should I turn it in?
Of course, you turn it, and
Cash.
don't think too much about it because you'll be like, and don't look inside, don't check it,
Yep.
just
Yep.
turn it in, right?
But the idea is, I think that in most cases, doing the right thing is actually something that is relatively easy if you don't think about it.
Well, and I think you're
I
right
don't think much about it.
because I think if you do that, you're going to get a lot of dopamine because you're going to be like, man, I did the right thing. As opposed if you take money, that's going to
No,
haunt you
I
forever.
hope you get. Oh, is it? Is it? I hope you get serotonin. It's serotonin we want, right? Not more than dopamine.
It's serotonin, dopamine. There's a bunch of chemicals. We could hang on. Let me pull it up if you want to pull it up. There's like major what?
It's like, I used to always try to avoid people who are shilling for handouts, begging for money,
Yeah,
and I now just make an effort. I'll give them a couple bucks or whatever, and just it's not my responsibility to make sure that they're not wasting that money.
yeah. No, it's not your. Yeah, I have a tell a story about that. Hang on here. Let me go back to these. So
Okay.
they call them happy hormones:
Yep.
dopamine, serotonin, endorphins, and oxytocin. Those are
Oxytocin.
apparently the big ones, actually.
Yeah, but dopamine's the short term one, right? So
The dopamines are the short term one.
yeah.
That's how you get high, right? Whatever
So
that is.
I think part of it is also, so how do you remember what you did? So if you did a good deed for someone, you helped someone who was stuck on the side of the road, or or you gave a couple bucks to someone who was begging, or whatever. You go through that, and if you reflect on it at the end of the day, I think you'll still feel good about it at the end of the day.
Oh,
But
oh yeah.
it's no longer the quick hit. It's the I did a good thing today.
You
I
did
did
a good
something
thing,
to
and then
help
it's
someone
more of
else.
a. It's more of like you do a hard day of work, and like you do
So
the
I
one.
think I think we don't do enough of that. So people who are kind to other people in the moment,
Yeah.
They need to reflect on the fact that they were kind that day at the end of the day.
Yeah, and you know what I'm talking. I want to go back. Hang on, just keep that thought. But I want to finish. Like you're doing all day. You're working out. You got your lawn. Everything looks really nice, and you're sitting down in your chair, and you're like, ah, it's not that feeling. It's like it's just this really, but it's not this crazy high. It's just this very gentle. But it's a
I think it's more the contentment, right?
yeah,
You're
yeah, I
content,
did
right? Yeah.
something good, right?
It's so one of the values of journaling is that you sit back and you think through the day. And
Yeah,
if you primed yourself with questions that the answer would make you feel good, like how
yeah,
did I help someone today?
yeah,
What good thing did I do today? It
yeah,
would first of all focus you to make you want to do those things throughout the day,
yeah,
but
yeah.
also it would give you a chance to realize, oh, I did. And I think it would give you more confidence that you are in fact a good person, that you
Oh
are in
my
fact,
gosh, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So then, if you're confident, you're less likely to be swayed as easily by people insulting you, people doing things that piss you off. Because at the end of the day, I think you're just a more confident person.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's exactly right. And now I'm thinking in my mind, I'm going to do this, Chris. I just made a rule for myself. I'm going to, at the night before or the start of each day, I'm going to ask myself one question, which is, regardless of how much I want to do it or don't want to do it, what's the one thing that'll bring me forward in my mission, in my God-given mission in this world that I need to do today? And more than likely, I'm not going to want to do it, but it's like, what's the one thing? Because
Mm-hmm.
man, I'll tell you, I put projects off for like literally in some cases years, and you finally do them, and you're like, oh my God, why did I wait so long? It's like it just took such a weight off my shoulders, because I just got this thing done.
Everything that you've got on your list is weighing you down.
Yes, yes, exactly.
You got to get it off your list somehow. Either get rid of it or do it.
Well, and this is the thing. What's the thing? It's like a cult following, getting things done, right?
Yeah.
That's the whole idea. Is you get it off on paper so your brain's not ruminating, and your brain believes it's like, look, I don't have to remember it. It's there when I want to go to it.
But that's like the simplified email inbox, right?
Yeah, yeah,
There's the things I take action on, things someone else is going to take action on, you know,
yeah,
things that I don't need to take action on, and you make four, and then everything you can do is getting things done. Everything you can do within 2 minutes, just do it.
yeah. If it's like 2 minutes, you take immediate action, and some people agree with that, and some people don't. And I don't know. It's not a bad plan, though. It's not a bad plan. Just don't think too much about it. Or I think what's better, I think what's happening is you're not thinking. I think you're trying to weasel out of it, and you call that thinking. Well, I'll tell you, I do that all the time. You may not do it, but
It seems to me like what we need to do is you need to set aside time that is your thinking time.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
that's the time when you're allowed to go into weird
yeah,
stuff and come up with ideas and justify whatever behavior you want. You do it at that point,
yeah,
but
yeah,
the point being in the moment when it's time to act. And that's probably the other thing is if you want to time bound it and say, these are the hours I do this, these are the hours I
yeah,
do this.
yeah. Block
And
time.
you time bound it and say at the end of that, what am I going to get?
Hmm.
What's the outcome of that
Hmm.
2 hour block,
Hmm. Hmm.
right?
Yeah,
But that actually takes planning.
it
So if
does.
you think about it, instead of just saying, here's the 7 things I'm going to do tomorrow, or here's the blocks of time I'm going to do, you tie them all together and say, at 8 o'clock, from 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock, or 8:50, I'm going to be working on this. And what's going to come
Yeah,
out of it? I'm going to have an action plan, a set of emails. I'm going to have whatever done. I'm going to, I will have, balance a checkbook. We don't do that anymore, but
yeah,
balance, that sort of thing.
yeah, yeah. I know. And it can be so simple. So there's a guy, Brendan Burchard. His rule of thumb is this, and he's coached like some of the highest end people in the world. And his thought is this: you got to figure out what you want to achieve. What are your goal? Like what your what is? And he goes, I need to see your calendar, and I need to see at least half your time doing tasks that'll move you towards that goal. And he goes, you almost never ever see that actually, almost never. And the thing is always like, oh my God, how am I going to do this? Because I don't have time. I got all this other sort of stuff. And a lot of times you just say no to those things. It's like, watching, reruns of Lost is just, you don't need to do that. You're going to be okay without watching it. And I think I kid myself all the time, man, about, like, why am I, like, here, I just want to gripe about myself for a minute. I watch way too much TV, way much YouTube, way too many things, and yet the CNC machine has been sitting there in my garage for probably a couple of years. Literally, it's been turned on twice. And I'm like, why am I not out in the garage running apart? Why am I not out learning how to make a little metal piece or something? You know,
Yeah,
why actually doing something that is of value? I don't know, man.
because anything that, well, part of it is, what are the consequences of failure?
Well, then I
Right.
feel
So,
bad.
so, so first of all, people don't want to fail. We got that one aspect, right? People
No,
don't.
no, nobody likes to fail.
But when you're talking about things that have a bigger consequence of failure,
Yeah,
then it gets even harder to overcome it, right?
yeah,
So, actually, everything has a consequence, right? The idea is whether or not you can play it down to where it's not a big deal.
yeah,
So, like the person who won't ask someone out
yeah.
because they're afraid of rejection, the consequence is the rejection, and in the mind that is a huge consequence.
Oh, a
Versus
huge.
someone, versus you meet a guy who just goes out and asks every girl out,
Yeah,
and probably 99% of the time he gets rejected
yeah.
and doesn't see it as a bad thing. Oh well, move on to the next one.
Well,
It's
yeah,
a totally different mindset.
yeah,
Even though they both got rejected,
yeah.
one saw that as the ultimate failure, and the other one saw it as a minor inconvenience.
Well, in sales, the way it's the way things is like they train you in sales to be super happy for a no because I got to go through 50 no's to get to my yes. So in their mind, in my mind, what they want me to be in my mind is that, oh my God, I just got 49 to go and I'm there, right? I'm closer to my goal now. And it's like, what a different thought process, you know?
But I think that's the way you train your mind to accept failure, right? So I often look at the Edison's quote when he tried all the different elements to make the filament that goes into the light
Oh yeah,
bulb,
you got like
and they all
thousands of
failed.
different
And he
options.
was saying,
Yeah.
how does it feel to have failed 10,000 times or whatever? And he goes, I haven't failed 10,000 times. I just found 10,000 ways it didn't work.
Yeah. You know, and
Right.
maybe, yeah. And maybe I'm answering my own question in my mind. Maybe this is why Trump is so successful and has so much power because he's had a ton of failures, but he never quits. He's like, dude, the freaking guy got shot, almost killed, and he's on the stage the next day in the same thing. I mean, I'd be like, screw this thing, man. No way. I'm not dying for this, you know?
There's some complexity here in that he has a bit of an ego in which
A
when,
bit.
when he's challenged, he gets defensive, he gets insulting and the like.
Oh, yeah.
One thing I think we've talked about this. I've noticed that this time round, the ego seems to be less in the way, so he's reacting less than he has in the past.
Well,
He
but
still makes his jibes. He still comments on this. He can't let a compliment go without a little bit of a backhanded aspect to it, right? He's doing a great job, but he could do better. But he's still doing a great job. I mean, it's
yeah.
it's his way, it's his style.
It's
But
his style. Yeah, it's
to
a
me,
your
that's coming across much more as his real character as opposed to him getting upset because he's being insulted or someone's going against him. So it really feels like that he's less defensive than he has been in the past
well, but he's got
because
the power. He won, man.
also, well, that's it. He got the power he won. The consequences aren't there either anymore. It's like he's in a second term, and if he truly does try to hold on to power, that's a different issue. But the fact is, technically, this is his second term. He can
This
do it.
is
He can do the stuff that he's always wanted to do because he's not going to be president in next
yeah,
term, right? So this is your chance. That's when they find two-term presidents. The first term is always doing stuff that makes sure you get a second term.
yeah,
And once you're in the second term, that's when you do your big stuff.
yeah.
That's when you say, screw being, working with both sides. I'm going to push through what I want to push through.
Well, yeah, because after 2 years, the reelection cycle starts again. So now if you actually work for 2 years, the next 2 years, you're like trying to get reelected again. Where
Yeah,
he
but
was done.
once you're in your second term, you can put all your attention towards
All your attention, yeah.
whatever you want. And
Now
so,
his thought is, I'm going to reorganize the world. Is what I'm doing.
so when you're talking about kind of his drive and his views on failure, I don't think he sees it as a failure. So you say his business is a failure. I don't know. Would he categorize it as a failure? I again, it's the criteria you use. What is the criteria? He goes, I found I did something and it didn't work out. Does that mean it was a failure?
Well, and in ways he blames other people for it too. What is he, a convicted felon? Like, I don't know how many
He's a
times,
convicted felon.
34 times or whatever
He's
it
done a
is.
lot of activities that I would consider not ideal in how he treats his workers.
Not
He's
ideal.
fought lawsuits against him, and he just basically drags out lawsuits until they just die off. That's his method. He's
Yeah.
not what I would call an ethical businessman by any means.
Yeah.
There's a lot of problems with him from the perfect ethical
Oh my God, of
leader
course.
standpoint.
Yeah.
The issue, the thing that made him so popular though was the fact that he was blunt about what he said. He gave his opinion. Other people would not give their opinion. If you were to
Yeah.
go ask anyone who was on the Democratic side a question that even had a chance of offending some group, they
Yeah.
would just backpedal and not say anything. And he was
Yeah.
like, "No, this is what I think."
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And
And that
that's
you were
people were
years ago.
people were craving a little bit of honesty.
Oh,
You
they
don't have to
crave
be
it.
perfect. You don't have to say the perfect thing. You just need to be honest.
I remember, like, I think it was one
Or
TV,
not even honest. You just need to be genuine. That
genuine
there's a difference there.
years ago. Like, I remember a TV person asking, what's your view on abortion? I'm against it. Next question. It's where before a normal politician would be dancing for half an hour around trying to say yes, no, maybe, yes, yeah, no, yeah, yeah. But okay, so what was the answer? Well, I can't really say because I don't want to say because I know I'm going to piss somebody off. So I'm trying to appease everybody, right?
Well, but there's also a lot of misconceptions about how the government works that I think people are learning about. Right? It's like
Yeah.
when you say we're going to get rid of the Department of Education, you go, "Oh my God, you're going to destroy schools across the country."
No, just going to the states. Yeah.
Oh, you mean there's another group that actually manages besides the Department of Education?
And it will
And
do a
it's like,
much better
oh,
job. Yeah.
that makes sense. The state, and then probably within a state, there's school districts, and things like it. Just the concept that it has to be done at the top level is something that we've gotten used to.
We've gotten used to it.
And so when you say I'm taking apart this thing at the top, it sounds like you're basically destroying the whole structure.
Yeah, right,
and,
right.
and that's not the case. And I think one thing I think will be a positive takeaway from everything that's going on is people will have a better sense of how the government runs.
I think so. I mean, and one thing that I've really learned from listening to these different ex-CIA guys talk and everything is the amount of it. Because you kind of think, I think in my head, okay, these guys must be smart guys. They must know what they're doing, and they're about as dumb as a piece of wood most of the time.
Which
I mean, these
groups?
are not necessarily smart people.
Who are we talking about?
The people that are running the government, like
Oh,
probably 75% of Congress. Maybe there's some smart ones in there, but
So I would generally say that anyone who's in a position of power in the government probably is pretty smart. The question is, smart does not equate to effective. Smart does not
yeah,
equate to principled. Smart does not equate to aligned with a goal, aligned with that none of that necessarily comes through. So what I see is this: the president comes in every 4 years and sets the tone for the government.
yeah.
And it's the job of the government to adjust itself to whatever tone the president wants.
Oh my gosh,
Some
yeah,
are going to be external foreign policy, some are going to be internal, some are going to be economy. They're all going to have their own bias, and they will set the tone that
yeah,
the government bodies are supposed to move toward.
yeah,
And
yeah.
yes, it's annoying to have to change
It's annoying.
course
Yeah.
every 4
Right.
years.
Yeah. Right.
And the feeling I have is the bureaucracy got so large that they were able to hide the way they wanted, not even purposely hide, but
Yeah.
the things that they do to make the government run were no longer visible to the people
Yeah.
who
Right.
who could steer, who should be able to steer.
Yeah.
So
You
the
know,
president says, "I want this to happen," or even Congress says, "I want this to happen."
Yeah.
And
Right.
these structures have gotten so complex with so many layers and so many rules and people working there that it was like a ship that was going in a direction and no one knew how to steer it.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. And I think just to be fair to them, I mean, I think there's some corruption and some evil intents, but I think the vast bulk of it is just incompetence. It's just not really
Yes.
thinking through things. Right. I was listening to Musk the other day.
Okay,
and
so
people
this is
ragging
where
on-
I would say institutionalized incompetence.
Okay, there you go. Fair enough.
I think it's
Fair
coming
enough.
from the structure and it forces itself on the people, so the people end up acting incompetent because the structure requires it of them.
Well, they required that, and it's like they don't want to rock the boat. This is how things have been
Yeah.
done, and they're
Well,
always done.
that's a requirement, right? I'm
Yeah.
going to get in trouble if I do the right thing, so I'm just going to do the government thing.
The thing that's close. And it's interesting what Musk was saying was it, they were talking about how they're attacking all the like what are the airline and the controllers, and it's like no, 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 no. We're trying to get rid of the he didn't say garbage, the sluff, the stuff that's not important. But he goes, we're actively trying to hire aircraft controllers, so we desperately need them. So we're laying people off, but we're actively trying to hire talent. We're in a talent shortage. And it's like, man, when he says that, I'm like, okay, that makes sense to me, you know?
Well, so you think about this, right? You have a department, a company, whatever,
Yeah.
that they do one thing and they learn to do it really well.
Yeah, right.
And so that's their job. They do
Yeah.
this one thing. And then they need to do some big projects, so they hire some project managers.
Yeah, right.
And then they need they need to grow to handle the economic growth. So they
Yeah.
bring on an HR department, or they expand the HR
Yeah.
department to do
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
pretty soon you no longer have the original tasks that people were
Yeah.
doing. You got all these supporting tasks that need to get done.
Yeah.
And then you build the infrastructure to have those people. They build their own rules about
Yeah.
how to operate. And
Right.
suddenly those rules about how those sub departments and those sub processes
Yes.
operate now impact the initial
Yeah.
operation of that group.
Yeah.
So that group is now no longer operating the way it did or could or should because of all these little other
Yeah.
departments that
Yeah.
are there for the benefit of them.
That's exactly right. I know Musk talked about that. He's like, there's so many regulations, and one or two by themselves. It's kind of like, what was that? The Gulliver that was tied down by like 1,000 little threads.
Yeah.
Breaking one would be easier. Even 10 would be.
I thought that was whoever came up with that one. That was a great
But he mentioned that, and I'm like, oh, that makes sense. He goes, there's just thousands of these things, and at some point they just become just.
Well, and this is why I think that the whole DEI thing was like the obvious one. It's like, what does DEI have to do with the IRS getting money, collecting taxes? What does DEI have to do with the Department of Justice going filing against criminals? What does it have to do with? I mean, and you're like, well, we want diversity, we want representation. I get that, and those are valid, I think, honorable goals.
Yeah.
And you can say this is the goal. When you're hiring, think about DEI. When
Yeah.
you're doing this, but you created whole rules and structures around it that cost money, that actually impeded the ability of those departments to do their job.
Yeah.
And now people were going, wait. I don't think it's that important that you make everything else inefficient.
Yeah. Right.
Right? It's like, it's important. It's like there's all these things that I think are important, but I've got in my mind a threshold that I will put up with before I start saying no.
Yeah.
And it crossed the threshold is what happened.
Well, and it's always starts on some form of this is how it currently is, and I don't like the reality, and it should be like that. So I'm going to apply a bunch of rules to try to force it how I want it to be, actually.
But instead of going to the hard thing, the root cause analysis, like you mentioned,
Yeah.
instead of going to the root and finding out why is it not the way I think it should be,
Yeah.
right? So this is the way the world is. I think the world should be this way. Why is it not this way? What can I do to change the world so that it becomes this other way?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? And in one case, when you go to the root cause, it just naturally, the outcome will change because you're changing the machine to have a different outcome.
Right.
Whereas if you just go and say, I'm going to throw in all these rules on top of this to get this outcome, that's like taking a truck after it's built and saying, we're going to turn it into a race car.
Yeah. Yeah.
No. You go back to when you were building the engine, when you were designing the axles and stuff, and that's where you start the build of the race car. You don't build a race car after you've got a truck.
Yeah.
It just is dumb. And that's well, it's dumb, but it's also hard. It's really hard. It takes a lot of effort to re-engineer a machine, a department back to the source.
It's dumb, it's inefficient, yes.
And well, not only that, people are resistant to change. You're going to have to change parts of that organization, and they're not going to like it.
Yeah.
But if you do that right, you can get the outcome you want. Unless it's really totally out there, you can get the outcome you want, that, or at least something much closer, without having to break things along the way.
Right. Exactly. But everybody sees the world differently. Everybody is protective of their little thing, whatever their little 10 people group is. I mean, it's just human nature to do that.
I mean, it goes back to the idea that we're not always arguing the same thing.
No. We see things.
So if you're saying it's more valuable to me to have representation across the country in every organization that mirrors the representation of the country, if that's the most important thing to you, then things like efficiency and other things are going to take a hit. That's just the way it is.
Well, and no, I agree with that actually. And the problem is if you argue against that, then it comes out to be like, oh, you hate black people, right?
Yeah. So
Because
what you argue for is, I know we need to be efficient. We need to keep the cost of living down and all. And as long as you can stay in that argument zone, you're fine. But then when you start getting attacked as being racist because you want more efficiency and lower cost of living, that's where it gets scary.
well,
Because it's like now you're going to shut up because you don't want to be called a racist. When
yes,
all you're doing is saying we need to stay efficient and we need to stay cheap. We need to stay whatever.
yeah,
It's the whole abortion argument, right? It's life. It's life versus rights. It's not life and not life. It's not
no,
rights
no,
and
you're
not
right.
rights. It's
Yeah,
life versus rights. That's the
yeah,
two things. I'm
yeah,
pro rights or I'm pro life. I'm one or the other.
yeah.
And
And it's not that
and I
simple.
may be both, but I've
Yeah,
just prioritized one over the other.
yeah.
Is the way it works.
That's how
And
you.
instead, it's viewed as 100% opposite, but in fact, it's not.
Well, and this is a fallacy. This is in my mind, this is black or white thinking. We always want to force it to, and so typically you see Democrats are typically, I want free will, I want free choice of the mom, and it's all about the mom, 100% about the mom. And I'm like, fair enough, it needs to be, and it's about the baby too, right? Because it's different. This is a unique thing. It's not only just your body at this point, right? You've chosen, or some event has happened where it's now about both of you. And I think, and then the Republicans are all about it's the baby, the baby, the baby with zero interest in the mom. And I'm like, that's not, I mean, come on, man, let's go back to the center somehow. They're both important. And it's hard. The situation is so complicated that it's impossible to say in every single scenario that this is the right answer. Because there's probably times when abortion is the right thing. As much as I don't like it, I hate it, it still is probably the right choice, right?
Well, so I agree with everything you're saying, and I also think if I'm looking at it from the individual's perspective, if I'm looking at it from society's perspective, if I've got a different viewpoint.
Yeah.
So when I look at the individual rights, I weigh the rights pretty highly in one area versus the life versus
Yeah.
life.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
But if I'm looking at what's best for society, I may believe that the demographics are crap. We don't have enough kids. We need more kids. So I may say, oh no, we need more kids. And that's a totally different decision. That's not even based upon those two
Oh no.
ideas. It's based on the idea that we need more people.
Yeah.
So really, depending on on where you're looking at it from, you could come up with totally different reasons to come up to your decisions and your viewpoint.
And your worldview of things. So before I would think, whatever, it's baby, just whatever, it's an abortion. It's like we're not every shit happens, everybody dies. Sorry, baby, you're dead, right? I mean, it's like whatever. A lot of babies die, But now my position has changed since I really kind of started going back to church. I'm like, now I view things differently. Now I view it as like that's a God-given life. God created that. And so it's not just a hunk of flesh, it's more than that. And so it needs to be treated with more respect. And I'm not opposed to abortions. I don't like them, but I'm not as opposed to them as just pure birth control. Some people are like, I just got pregnant, let's get an abortion, whatever, try it. I mean,
That's the majority of abortions in my
and I
mind.
don't like that. That part's not, that part doesn't
I mean,
sound
when you figure there's 5.5 million pregnancies and a million abortions a year in the United States, that means that what 15-18% of pregnancies or would have been pregnancies are terminated in abortion.
yeah, yeah.
I don't think there's that much incest and rape going on in the
No,
world.
not at that, no way.
So, at that level, it is a form of birth control. So
It is.
and the thing is, you have birth control. There is birth control.
Well,
So if you take time ahead of time, a little bit of time and effort ahead of time, you can actually make sure that you don't need that.
well, and it's a part of education, right?
And by
so
the way, these are two guys talking about women's abortion
Yeah, well,
rights and birth control.
which I know there's people in my family that usually just shut up because you're a guy. What do you know? You're an idiot. So fair enough. Okay. What was I going to say? I got to.
But if guys had the ability to have a birth control pill, the equivalent of a birth control pill, right? So they couldn't get women pregnant. I think a lot of guys would take it.
Yeah, it's called snip and clip.
Yeah, that's not a pill. That's a procedure, and Not necessarily reversible either if you decide you
In
want kids.
some cases, yeah, right,
So,
exactly.
but the idea being, ever since abortion and the pill came out, it became much easier for women to protect their
And I think
reproductive
that
rights
makes sense.
and to not have the consequences
No,
that
because
would
it
happen.
freed women up though. Because
Yeah,
before, women were under, if they didn't have this man, right? I mean, to take care of them, they were screwed actually. So
they had the burden. They had the burden of that.
it gave women tremendous power, right? Which is a good thing actually. As much as I want people to be able to make good choices for themselves. And now on the Republican side, right, on the Christian side of things, now we're saying that, oh my gosh, okay, I don't want you to have abortion. You shouldn't be having sex. Listen, people are going to have sex. People have been having sex forever since the beginning of time. And then they say, well, I don't like that. And I don't think you should use abortion or condoms or any sort of birth control thing because now that's just, it's just, what do they call it? Enabling bad behavior that I don't want actually. And I'm like, I get that. Yeah, I get that. But if you don't do that, you're going to get a lot of babies, right? Because as much as you don't want people having sex before marriage, people are going to have sex before marriage.
So was there ever a society that people didn't have sex before marriage?
I don't know. Probably not, actually. I mean, it
I
is
you might get a subset, but
a
I think at the end
subset.
of the day, the society knew how to hide it.
Oh, yeah, it's hidden all the time, actually. And Chris, it's a built-in drive. Otherwise, we wouldn't have as many babies. I mean, it's a strong primal urge, and it's got to be, and that's okay. That's okay, but it's got to be controlled. It's got to be managed. Just like violence is a primal urge sometimes too. Man, it's got to be addressed that it's an okay thing, but we need a certain framework, a certain set of parameters around it so that we can get those urges out without hurting people.
So I forgot who said this, but the men in the male psyche, the idea is to protect, to provide, and to produce.
To a large extent, maybe not every single man, but certainly the bulk
Right?
of
I
them,
mean,
yes.
these are the things that drive you. You want to
It's
make
like
stuff.
built
You
in.
want to protect people. You want to to reproduce, right?
No,
And these are the things that drive male activity, male growth,
not
male
the only
culture.
things, but those are some core ones, yes.
And I don't know necessarily what the equivalent would be on from a feminine standpoint, but
Well,
I would
women want
assume,
nurturing.
and I think a lot of this is tied into the biochemical aspect of
Yeah,
how
yeah,
how,
oh
how
yeah,
we
yeah,
operate, right?
yeah.
And we tie it to gender too, right?
Oh yeah,
Because
absolutely. It's time.
because because the physicality goes along with certain things that you do, we associate those with the gender. So
Yeah.
you could get people who play those roles regardless of what their sex is.
Oh, of course, and it happens all the time. And we're on a we're on like a spectrum of like male energy to female energy, and it's
Hmm.
like not every man is like the alpha man. Like there's some that are a little more on the feminine side, somewhere in the middle, some far onto the other side, and that's okay. I don't have a problem with that. But I have a problem when you want to deny reality, right? When you want to say that, no, 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 men can get pregnant and have babies. It's like, no, they can't. They just really can't. And I don't care how much you want it to be that way, just the
So,
hardware is
so,
not
so
there.
this is where I get into the whole sex versus gender conversation,
Yeah, that's a complicated
right?
one. Yeah.
There's the biological sex, there's this social gender
Yeah,
idea.
social gender. Yeah.
And so what you end up with is we've tied, or the argument that you're saying, a man can't have babies.
Cannot,
You're
100%.
saying the male gender in society cannot have babies.
Yes, there's just the hardware is not
And I
there.
would say no. Sorry, you said the men cannot have babies. The men, so the gender of man
The
cannot have
gender of
babies.
man. Yeah.
And I think no, what you really mean is the sex of male cannot have babies.
Okay, that's fine. Whatever you want to
But
say.
that whatever you're saying is where the arguments are all occurring, right?
Okay, so
So you have conservatives arguing that they are the same thing, that gender and sex are the same thing. You have
oh
the
yeah,
opposite
yeah,
side
right.
who are saying they're not the same thing, and we can ignore sex entirely because it's only gender that matters.
Well, if you want to frame
And
it
I
that
think
way, maybe, yeah.
and I think what you end up with is no, you got to understand that they're interconnected at a level that goes beyond just the idea that society says this is a
Yeah,
man's.
yeah, exactly right.
They're tied back to biology, but they
Yes.
are not defined only by biology.
No, no, you're exactly right. And it's they're intercrying, and it's impossible to separate them apart. We just can't do that. Like from a Christian standpoint, where we have a body and a soul and maybe other things, and those things cannot be separated. It is joined together, right? You
Mm-hmm.
cannot break out your soul without your body.
But I think the idea here, though, is again, everything's on a spectrum, right? So how somebody looks, male, female, is going to be on a spectrum. How somebody physicality on a male on a masculine, feminine is on a spectrum.
Oh, totally,
All these different aspects, and so you can dial each of those in to a certain level,
yeah.
and say this person in totality is a man,
Well,
and
well, I view
and
it. Listen, I do it like, listen, let's drop your drawers, and I can tell in 2 seconds, right? There's and if you got like external equipment, you ain't getting pregnant. There is just no.
again, you're going back to male, female. I'm saying man,
Yeah.
woman here.
Well,
So,
yeah,
so,
yeah, yeah. I think whatever you want to call it, I just have a hard time. Yeah, I'm a big fan of male female. It's
so
like,
I was talking to AI this week, was it? And I was asking it questions about specifically about about the idea that there's male, female, and then there's whatever. Yeah, I say, isn't it? Shouldn't I be able to just define everything as male, female? And it's oh no, but there's the intersex and blah blah. I go, I get that, but even science puts everything into either male or female.
yeah,
Even the intersex, the XO, the XXX, the
yeah,
XYX, all these the YO, all these ones actually have a definition of male or female
yeah,
by science. So science has gone through and said, hey, there's only two classifications here. And maybe they should have been more open to a third or fourth classification. But at
maybe,
the time, they were probably like, no, 99% fits in this categorization. Let's just
yeah,
shove it into the categorization.
yeah,
And
yeah.
if I go to that, then I can say scientifically that there isn't anything genetically besides male female.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not talking about the hardware. Whatever you want to say. That sex. I mean, and the problem is the words have been
Well,
so
the problem is some
refined.
people might have both sets of
But those are
reproductive
rare, Chris. Those
stages.
are extraordinary. And something went wrong, right?
Okay, well, okay, but if they exist and they live and they didn't die off because the environment, a lot of deformities people die off, but
Yeah,
we live
yeah.
in a
Most.
world where they don't.
Yeah,
They don't always, and so quite often you will have full-grown people who are intersex who, if you look at them, you might say you can't tell which one they are. They might be one or the other, and the plumbing or the what's visible may not
yeah.
map to what we see.
And
So
I don't have a problem with that, but I don't want to get hung up on the outliers. I want to get hung up on the center of the bell curve, right?
this is inherently what I think has gotten out of control on the left is they want to hang up on the outliers. And if you can't if the system doesn't give the outliers their own representation, then we break the system.
Yeah, I don't think. Yeah,
See, and this is I think what inherently is going on underneath that people don't understand is most of us are middle of the road people. We say, hey, we got a definition for 80-90% of the world, and then we'll handle everything else as a one-off.
yeah, right, right. Which
Right?
is probably fine.
Which is pretty normal to me.
Yeah,
But what's
which is
happening
not
is
bad logic.
there are people that say, no, those one-offs need the same exact treatment as everyone in the 80-90%, and therefore the system can't do that, so we'll have to re-engineer the entire
You
system.
know, and when you put it that way, I don't have a huge argument for that because I think every living human beings needs to be treated with dignity and respect, right? No doubt about that.
Sure.
But, sorry, but not at the expense of everybody else.
I would say if we were all in agreement and in alignment what we meant by dignity and respect,
Yeah, yeah,
this would be a lot easier.
yeah, yeah,
I don't require, Scott, if I tell you that I want you to call me they, them, or any other one, right? And you decide not to,
yeah,
I really don't care,
yeah, right.
right? But I don't have to live with this idea that I'm different than biologically or how I physically how I am.
But here's
If
the
I
way I
had to deal with if I had to deal with that on a regular basis, that might trigger me that you wouldn't do that.
well, here's the thing though, Chris, like if you want to go from Bob to Brenda,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'll freaking call you Brenda. I don't have a problem with that. I will do
Mm-hmm.
that because I think that's a respectful thing to do. If I know you're not bullshitting me, if I know that this is really what you're doing and it's not
Mm-hmm.
just some random thing you go back and forth 20 times a day, I will call you Brenda because I think that's respectful. And what does it hurt me, right? And it helps you out, but but you can't force me to do that.
Well, the idea here is if you don't do that,
Yeah.
regardless of whether you feel forced or not, if you don't do that, you're insulting me. You're attacking me is the viewpoint. Because you won't respect that aspect of what I want, you are now attacking me. You're attacking my rights. This is where the conversation went to, which is where I have a problem with this is if I don't think you're attacking me by you can let's say you think I'm overly effeminate, you just keep calling me she,
Yeah, right.
right? Teenage kids will do that. They'll make fun of each other and do that sort of thing.
I'd probably call you Princess, is what I'd call you at that
Yeah,
point.
okay, yeah.
Princess.
And the idea is, what if that actually does trigger me, or the like, right? And then so you're not showing me the respect that I deserve.
Yeah.
Is the thought process here? And so what happens is, all right, so that's the first step. The next step is you go, well, I didn't know you wanted me to call you this,
Yeah.
right? And that's why we now have the pronouns come out on different social media
Whenever I
platforms.
see that, I always cringe just a little bit, you know.
Yeah, but if you're of the opinion that I need to show respect to others by recognizing what they want, this is them telling me ahead of time, "Hey, this is what I want."
Yeah, that's
Now at this
fine.
point, now at this point, if you ignore that,
Yeah.
you are in fact they've told you, "Hey, please call me this." Right? So if they don't tell you that and you miss it, yeah, you got a perfectly good excuse.
But see,
If they tell you that and you miss it, then I'm saying, your excuse is not as strong.
here's my rule of thumb, right? Just almost across the board. You have the right to do anything you want until it starts infringing upon my rights. Now we got to talk about it, right? Now you just can't go with impunity with that.
Doesn't that go the other way? You have the right to call me traditional male female pronouns all you want until it starts infringing upon my rights. And
Anyway,
if I believe my rights are such that I should not have to be called something that I don't feel I am, then you've just impinged on my rights. I can make the argument either way. I agree one way is more conformist to the way we are and probably easier for society to handle. But that doesn't necessarily mean. In this case, I think I could argue the exact same argument the
hang
other
on.
way.
Give me a second to think about that because I think you bring up a good point. Inherently, I just have this resistance against it, but let me think through it.
I do too. So I'm trying to argue the other side here in this
Yeah, that's
situation
good.
because you know,
Um, as long as I'm not forced to do it, then I'm fine. I'm good with it.
okay. So let's say you're not forced to do it, but you decide not to do it.
Yeah, right.
So what does this tell me about you? Let's say the average person's a considerate person, and like if you ask him, "Hey, please call me by these whatever pronouns," and most people will probably do it just because they want to make peace and harmony
Yeah,
and
right. I
not
don't want to
upset,
create
right?
problems,
And it's
right?
not too much of a stretch in most cases, right?
Yeah,
But let's say you decide I'm not going to do it. So now when I talk to you and you decide you're not going to do it, even when I point it out to you and maybe try to correct you on it, and you
yeah,
still don't.
right.
At that point, what do I think of you?
Well, at this particular point where I don't really care what you think about me. Like I got over that a long time ago.
Sure, but how I think about you will affect the way I interact with you, how I treat you, decisions I make about you. Right? So you know that how you interact with someone is going to impact the way they think about you.
Yeah,
And if you want someone to not yell at you, not call you a racist, a fascist, or whatever, and if you think that's unfair for them to do, well, you just triggered them by showing them that you don't care enough about them to do this thing that they asked you to do, that the other average person out there would probably do when asked.
here's the
You put
problem
yourself
with
to be more on the a-hole chart than anyone else.
that will work for a while. And I think that, and it's changing now, but I think so many people thought, oh yeah, maybe I'm a little bit, okay, maybe I got to rethink this thing. Maybe I got to do this. But at some point, the pressure was so much. Like whenever you get so much pressure on you, you can either cave to it, or or what happens is you could get into a fight because you're like, no, I'm not doing that. It's like I'm not going to concede to your wishes. So now we're in a fight, right? And that's what's happening right now.
Well, I think what happens is there's not enough tolerance or grace or whatever on both sides of the issue. So what
Oh,
happens here is
definitely that. Yeah,
someone goes in there and they don't mean to be offensive, and they get the wrong they get your pronouns wrong,
yeah,
and you get offended. Hopefully you correct them. Hey, please call me this and this. And the thing is, because the disconnect between what they see and what you want them to do, right?
yeah,
If I see a guy who look what looks like a man dressed as a woman, I'm still thinking he's a man.
yeah,
I'm not thinking he's a woman, right? In my mind. So I'm not going to default to she in my thinking. So I will probably keep going back to he, and then you'll have to keep correcting me.
yeah. Right.
And I don't mean it as an insult. There's a disconnect in what I see, and therefore how I think about it. And if you take offense at that, then we've got a problem, because you're taking offense at something I don't mean to offend you at.
Yeah,
I've got 50 years of thinking the way I do, and now I'm seeing something that doesn't match that, and so I keep defaulting back to what I know,
yeah. Just pattern matching,
right?
basically. Yeah,
And
yeah,
if you can't accept that, there's a problem there on your side. But understanding how other people think, understanding and respecting the fact that their brains don't work the way you want them to work,
yeah.
and you have to adapt. That's just part of being a
Well,
good member of
and I'd
society.
love to go back into strategy because this is really interesting. Because I want to
Oh,
go
before we
in
do
with
that, can I ask you a
yeah,
question?
yeah. Ask
So I
me.
was watching a British game show, and they were showing curse words in the U.S. and where they're used. They had
Oh,
this
interesting. Okay.
map, and they were saying that in the South, particularly in your area, asshole's not used very much. Have you noticed that?
I've never. Yeah, don't
They
know
were
that.
saying the West Coast and the East Coast and the Northwest all use it pretty heavily, but when you get down to right in your area, and even like Florida and Georgia tend to use it, but like right in your area, no.
I've never really heard that before. I mean, we say things like "bless your heart," and doesn't always mean "bless your heart." Um, if you really want to get nasty, you're like, "Oh, I'm praying for you," and then if it goes, "Oh, I'm going to lay hands on you," when it gets really bad,
Well,
you're going to be
so
healed of
no,
that
but
demon.
it was interesting because using like gosh or
Yeah.
darn, right, or things like that. They were showing what parts of the country use that, but the a hole one was the one, the asshole one was the one that it was interesting. I saw that that it showed your area didn't use it much. So I was wondering if you guys use it.
I don't know. Right. Now, the funny thing is now I'll pay attention to it, right? It's my, what is it, reticular activation system, RAS or whatever. Now I'll start looking for that where I wasn't looking
Yep.
before.
Well,
Yeah.
just something to think of. Okay, so you were
Yeah.
talking about
So do
strategizing.
something else. And then I want to go back to personally how we can improve things. Because all we do is we just talk, talk, talk. But I just need to make sure that we have some outcomes so that personally Scott and Chris can get a little bit better. Was my other. So, anyways, this is interesting because let's talk in terms of war and combat. And
Okay.
it's like, how can a tiny percent of the population manipulate and control? Basically, let me rephrase it this way. In this case, I think the tail's wagging the dog, right? We say that in the South sometimes. And what a fascinating tactical strategy that this tiny percentage can significantly manipulate and control the majority. That's power.
Hmm.
That's very Machiavellian, very Robert Law, 48 Rules of Power kind of stuff.
It is. It's very much so, and it's all about, as far as I can tell, it's all about building a relationship with the audience, with the
Yeah.
masses.
It's just fascinating.
And
Yeah.
it's a one to many relationship. It's not a one to one relationship. I think most of us build one to one relationships, like you and I, and we have a one to one relationship here.
Yeah.
Um, we're not. I don't think we're particularly good at a one to many relationship. So even in a group setting, it's not really a one to many. It's a bunch of one to ones in a
Yeah.
particular group that's aligned in viewpoint,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
don't build your but because we have our pathways of communications are two way.
Yeah.
When
Yeah.
you're talking to one to many, it's really a one way communication.
No, no, that's exactly right. So this is the essence of marketing. So you think you're writing a sales letter, you're giving a speech or something, and you're thinking, oh, I'm going to send this to 1,000 people. No, you're not. you're sending to one person,
Yeah.
repeated 1,000 times.
Yes.
Just a
If you
different.
want to, but what you want to connect when you're talking about like the true influencers out there who have millions and millions of people who follow them, right? And they don't need to get all of them. They don't need 100% activation of their followers to
Oh
get
no, no,
done.
no, no,
You
no.
know, 5%, 10% will make us will sway action, and quite often. So I think there's a mixture here. One is you like someone, therefore you want to be like them, or you follow them, or
Yeah,
you
yeah,
align with them. That's one thing.
yeah.
You like them, right? The other one is you trust them, and
Yeah.
those aren't almost the same thing. But the trust
Oh, right, right, right.
allows you. If you trust them, then you let their opinions sway you as fact. It's like if you like someone, you let their opinion sway you because you like them, and they said it, and because my this famous person said it, oh, I believe it,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Versus, I think when you trust someone, you actually accept their facts, their reasoning as those lower layers of critical thinking, and then they become the basis for your argument, even though you have no real understanding of where that came
Well,
from.
no, that totally makes sense, and I agree with that because there's another drive in human beings, like that we have a tribe mentality. Because I need to be in a tribe
Mhm.
because then I'm safe. So, and I'm willing to not fight you because I may not agree with you, but we've kind of made this pact that we're going to kind of watch out for each other.
Mhm.
And you could be wearing a pink dress, and I'll call you princess,
Mhm.
um, even though I know your arms are this big around, and you could
Mhm.
like crush human beings, just smash them into the ground.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, princess, I'll be friends with you
Uh-huh.
because I'm getting something out of it, you know?
Well, but it occurs to me like so like we all want to be part of a group. We all want to align with certain things. We all build opinions, and quite often we don't have the time to go out and go back to first principles. Go which would be
Right,
best. Go
right.
back to the facts. Go back to first principles. Go back to reality. Go back to the universe and the laws of the
Yeah,
universe and figure
right.
things out. So what we do is we take shortcuts. We find people we trust. And if
It's,
you've done your due diligence, or you've just made a good decision, let's say you're good at reading
yeah.
people, you can say, this person is trustworthy, and you should never trust anyone 100%, but you should say, I think that they're probably correct 95% of the time, and
Well, and
therefore they say.
I want to redefine the word trust, actually.
Okay.
In a sense, I trust you because I'm able to predict what you're going to do. And in my mind, that's what trust means.
So okay, I agree with that, but what I'm getting at is I trust you because I've seen things that you've done that align with my values or thinking, or the way the way my mind works, and I've seen the outputs enough that makes it predictable, right?
Yeah, right, right, right.
Right.
Exactly.
So if you've now this to me is the right way to learn to trust somebody. Others will learn to trust someone because they're charismatic, because they're good looking, because they have a great voice, because they're sexy, or something, right? And
Well,
that's not really the same kind of trust, but they put their trust in that personality.
yeah,
And so I think being able to judge what type of trust you can put into
yeah,
someone
yeah,
is a
yeah.
big
There's
thing, right?
different
So
kinds of trust.
I think one of the things that a lot of people learned about Trump in the last 5 years is that you can trust him to do certain things,
Oh my gosh, I totally trust Trump. I may
right?
not agree with him. I don't like him, but he's pretty easy to predict what's going to
That
happen,
actually
right?
makes, yeah. So understanding, being able to predict how someone's going to act, even if it's not in a way you want them to act,
Right,
but
right,
you
right.
trust yeah. So rarely does he do something that I would go, where the hell did that come from?
No, no, he pretty
Right?
much just says it
It,
like it is. Yeah,
yeah. And if it does come out, I'll go, oh, I wonder who he was talking to get that. I
yeah,
trust his logic well enough to understand that I don't necessarily like it, but that I understand where it's coming from.
yeah,
That's something that the other side hasn't figured out yet. Is they lost the trust because people couldn't follow their chain of
yeah.
logic.
Right,
People couldn't
right, right.
follow
Yeah,
and they're gonna have to rebuild that trust and show that no, we're logical people. We understand. We make decisions based upon facts. We represent everyone, not just
yeah,
some small group. They're gonna have to do all that.
yeah.
But
Yeah,
yeah, I
Trump's an administrating guy. He's so crass because just in the test there, he basically said, Hamas, you need to release all the hostages or I'm going to kill every single one of you. I mean, presidents don't talk like that. That's not a, You know, we always say we need to go to the table, all the options on the table. They don't say we're going to kill you. That's not a presidential thing to say. But, you know, he'll do it. He'll have no problem doing it.
Well, so trust does not necessarily mean you like or agree with someone.
Oh my God, no, not
And
necessarily.
that's one thing we need to understand
Yeah.
as well is trust is generally viewed as a positive characteristic or positive aspect that we but it doesn't necessarily mean it's a good
No.
or thing. And that so I trust certain people to always do bad things because it's in the
Yeah.
benefit of them to do those bad things, right?
Mhm.
And that's I think one thing we need to make sure that people learn to define the word trust as an understanding of someone else and what they will do and how they will do
Yeah.
it. So, and I think what we need to do as part of our whole method of building tools for people to navigate the world as we go forward is how do you build trust in online people? How do you build trust in news organizations? How do you build trust in companies? How do you do that? And what is it that you're doing when you look at it and say, I trust this company will always make the right ecological
Yeah.
decision that will protect the environment.
Right.
I trust that this, like Patagonia, I trust that because
Yeah.
they've lived that, right?
Yeah.
Other companies or countries or governments or people. I mean, if I look at someone who's famous online, do I know enough about them to trust how they're going to act? Like if I were to see something like a Taylor Swift or Beyonce or somebody who and something were to happen, do I trust to understand how they're going to respond? And this is why quite often when you see someone who's never been political get political,
Yeah.
suddenly the trust is like, wait, this is not what I know about them. Why? What's going on here?
Right. Exactly. Well, I know in marketing, the way to build trust is through consistency. So if we continue this, but this is our 14th podcast.
Yeah.
You know, I'm committed. I'm not sure if you're committed. We haven't directly talked about it.
We're all both committed.
But I'm committed to go through at least through the end of this year.
Yes.
You know, even if we got not a single other viewer, we're going to do this podcast. And it's going to come out on Sunday at noon Central Time consistently. You can trust that, right?
Yep.
Because like right now, I haven't edited the last podcast, and I'm feeling pressure on myself but guess what? Saturday morning, I'm going to edit that thing, and I'm going to get it out there, and I'm going to publish it, because there's almost like, for me, it feels like if I don't do that, something breaks inside me. It's like I did a bad thing, right?
Well, I think consistency shows discipline.
Yes.
Consistency shows that you value yourself and others to the point where you're gonna be consistent in how you do things.
And it doesn't mean I necessarily respect you or like you, but it does mean I can depend on you in this set of parameters.
There are people in the world that you do things for that aren't necessarily people that you specifically care for or the like. But as people, there are things when I'm driving down the street, I don't just cut across traffic.
Right.
Not because it's against the law, but because it's dangerous, but it's also I might hurt somebody else. I mean, not just me, I might hurt somebody else.
Yeah.
So,
like I know one of our Greg, we had him on the show, right?
Yeah.
He said that he looks for our podcast. And so he expects it to come out, California be 10 a.m. on Sunday morning. I mean, he expects that. So all of a sudden, if he didn't see that, I memean, what's going on in his, the level of trust in us is going to drop a little bit, right? He's like, wait a minute, guys. I want, I plan my whole day around your podcast, which I think is insane. But, some people are going to do that. Because that's my thing. From 10 to 12, that's what I do. I watch you guys, right?
Yep. What in a world where there is so much stuff going on,
yeah,
building consistency is a huge part of it, right? But even for yourself, if you are consistent, right?
Yeah.
I know I need to exercise. I'm not consistent about how I do it.
Yeah, right.
If I build consistency in it, it will get easier to do.
Yes.
I will get better results out of it.
You'll get better results, actually.
And so trust isn't just about trusting in others. You need to trust yourself.
Oh my gosh, that's a super important thing. And
so let's think about that. Do I trust myself to do the exercise I need to do to get healthy? Right now, the answer is no, because I haven't shown the pattern. I haven't shown the behavior.
Right.
Once I do enough of the behavior that I don't question it anymore, then I can say I trust myself to get there.
Yeah.
I trust that I could get there. That's a different
Well,
conversation.
that's a
That's not saying, do I trust I am going to
shoulda,
get
woulda, coulda. Everybody can do that,
there.
And I would say, in my mind, the more important thing for you is not the intensity of the exercise, but just that you do it every day. And even if that means you just walked 5 minutes, I mean, that's a win, right?
Well, I'm
That's
trying to do more than the walking. I'm trying to use the kettlebells and other things and to
okay.
work
That's
on the
fine.
core
That's
because
all good.
I've got back issues and the core helps with the back. So I
Okay,
mean,
that's good.
all of
That's
that.
all fine. But
Yeah.
I really trust you that you're going to do just a little something every day. Because here's what I know, Chris. It may not be any big deal that day, but man, these little things, they sum up in a really big way. And I think sometimes people don't see that, right? How important the consistency is.
I've got a I've told you I've got a bad knee. I'm missing
Yeah.
the ligament in the back of my knee, and for 20 some odd years, I babied that knee, not really pushing it to the limits of what it is. And
Well,
then,
that may be a good thing or nothing. I mean, you need to deeply understand the problem and know what is the best action for it,
well,
right?
so mechanically, it should operate fine, but right now it doesn't bend the way it should. It's a little bigger than the other knee. It doesn't quite bend quite as far, you know. So what I was doing physical therapy for my back a year ago, and they had me working on this, and it hurt like hell. I
Yeah.
would work on the knee, and it would take 3 days to heal, and
Okay.
and what I do now, but I've probably gotten back to about 90% of the knee was probably at about 60% when I started. It's at about 90% now, but it took over
So,
a year. Now, I was thinking if I had pushed myself to actually work on it a little bit every day for that year,
yeah.
how much further would I be?
I don't know. You don't know. Probably further, probably, right?
Yeah.
But you got to
Instead of
figure out
twice a
Chris,
week.
what's the optimal path because just because you can go through pain doesn't mean that's a good thing. You could be going backwards, right? So you need to identify the pain and say, what is the optimal path? That's important. And it's not ego, it's not the macho thing. You need to get somebody who's technically competent to come in and
Yeah.
say, hey,
Yeah.
this is your best path forward.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to hurt a little bit. I'm like,
Oh, that
okay.
woman I was talking to yesterday about, people need to get out of the house and build relationships. And you're saying it's the pain. People try to avoid the pain. And she goes, I love the pain. I always go after the pain.
It's true. So there's this guy, Tim Kennedy, right? He's an MMA fighter. He personally, but not personally. I mean, we were in a group, but he was teaching us and everything. And his philosophy is different. Like, so he said in a fight, and if he messed up and like got punched in the eye and was bleeding and everything like that, they'd constantly want to give him some sort of a pain reliever or something like that. He's like, no, 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 no. I don't want that. I want this pain to soak in, and I want this pain to teach me. Like I made a mistake and I'm paying the price, so I never do that again, actually. I don't want to be blunt. He calls it, I want the full effect, actually, because that's what's going to make me better. He's a little bit psycho, but he's an effective dude.
So, but the idea, right, getting comfortable with discomfort,
I don't
right?
like that term. That is, I want to throw up when I hear that term.
What I hear when I hear that is you need to embrace the painful parts of what
I'm fine
happens,
with that. Yeah.
and in fact, you probably need to seek them out a little bit.
You need to seek them out because I'm willing to do this in spite of the pain because I believe I'm going to have a better outcome if I
If
do
it
this.
hurts, well, okay. If it's not like a nervous reaction where you're touching something hot and you're protecting your body,
Yeah.
if you going out to do something hurts, then it's probably something that will make you grow.
Maybe, but I do want to caution against the pain just for the sake of pain. That's called stupid with a capital S in my
Yeah,
mind. That
it's masochism. Yes.
but if I know that my future self is going to be better, then I'm willing to pay that price. I'm okay with that. But just to say I have pain, that's kind of dumb in my mind. Because it could take you backwards. It could be like you do something, you hurt something, now you're down for a month, and you'll never you'll never recover from that potentially. That's where we got to think too. I mean, I don't think we can't separate taking action away from thinking. They've got to be in the right ratio together. Like you're making a cake, right? Everything's the right ratio.
Yeah, but again, I think that
Uh-oh, you just said what?
we've put in enough ingredients in the thinking side that we can kind of slough off on the thinking a little bit and lean towards the action side.
Okay, fair enough. As long as we've done the thinking and we're not doing stupid stuff. don't do stupid things, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna say the stupid things that you survive are the things that teach you.
I mean, if you
Well,
need,
hopefully they teach you. They may not. I mean,
I
that's
mean, if you need to go through the pain to learn something, I guess if that's what it takes, then okay. I'm just going to propose there's a more efficient path. There's probably a better path forward, that's more effective.
as long as that thinking doesn't keep you from just going and doing it.
Absolutely,
Because
100%. Yeah, yeah. I'm not saying you're trying to avoid the pain. I'm just saying just don't think because there's pain you're doing something good. That may not be true.
yeah,
Like I know special forces guys, I've talked to them. They're like, listen, we will take a lot of pain if we believe in the mission. But if we're doing it just for the pain, we call that stupid. That's just stupid, right? So, anyways, my thought is maybe we should make a shirt. Don't be stupid. um, so yeah, but at the same time, though, it's critical, and you got to get this right. Like if you're afraid of the pain and you're avoiding doing something you know is good for you, that's a problem, right? That's
well,
a problem.
again, so nowadays I don't know that the whole cold showers are supposed to be good for you and the like. And
They are. They're totally good for you.
well, no, apparently the newest stuff that I've heard is that it's the sauna, the heat is actually better for you.
Well, the sauna is
You'd
great
be, you'd
too.
be better off going into a sauna than taking the cold showers, is my understanding.
Well, but cold
Um,
showers they reduce inflammation. There's all sorts of benefits from doing that.
and so my understanding is the sauna is actually better for a lot of that stuff.
So
So
okay, hang on. A lot. Are you saying?
unless you're training hard, where you want to hit the swelling aspect of it,
So you're
then
saying? Are you making this statement? Let me see. So you're saying that the sauna is the best course of action in every case?
for someone who's not specifically working to reduce the size of the workout,
Okay. So
because the
my
workout
thought.
the ice keeps it from getting big, right? I mean, it keeps
It
the blood
prevents
flow.
the swelling,
But the
inflammation.
blood flow is actually how you get oxygen into the area, and the oxygen
Yes.
is what you want. So heat causes the oxygen, the blood to flow, which will bring more oxygen to the area. So the argument now is the benefit you get from the cold is outweighed by the benefit you get from increased blood flow and heat.
Well, okay. Then if that's scientifically proven, if we know that with
So
100%
you
certainty,
can look up. I've seen about half a dozen videos on this now in the past 2 weeks. I'm not going to say it overrides the idea of the value of a cold shower, but anyway, the reason why I brought up the cold shower though was again, it's not that painful to do, but it's uncomfortable enough that it
oh
takes
yeah.
mental effort to go do it.
Oh yeah, 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 and that's the benefit actually, because it may be short-term pain, but now pain doesn't mean harm. Harm and pain are different things. When you
Yep.
talk to a doctor, they take a Hippocratic oath not to harm anybody. But at the same time, that same doctor will say, "Look, I can give you all the pain I want. I'm that's not a problem. I'm just not supposed to harm you." So I think are you harming yourself? And if you're not harming yourself, then you're training your brain in that case, right?
Yeah. And that's honestly the hardest thing. I told you I did it for a year straight and had no problem. And now I have a hard time, getting in the shower and waiting for it to warm up. So
Then maybe you need to go back and do it a couple times a week then or something like
I
that.
think I just need to go back and do it because of the mindset required to do it.
Yeah, because in that case, I don't think you're harming yourself. I don't think it's doing any harm to you. And there's like the Wim Hof guy, the Iceman, says there's all sorts of cardiovascular. I mean, there's a lot of sounds like reasonable science.
So he's trained his body. He can resist all kinds of infections and the like. Didn't he inject himself with something at one point? And yeah.
I don't know. So there's some benefit to it. So, but I think that's a good thing. In fact, I'm going to start doing it. I'm going to go do a cold shower. Actually, I think that's good because I'll tell you when I was doing cold showers, man, I did them for I don't know like a month every day or something like that. That's my favorite drug. I mean, for the next 2 hours, you are like, woo, I'm feeling good.
See, I wish so our schedule at home is we all shower and bathe at night before we go to bed.
Okay.
And I'm like, the real benefit of a cold shower would be early in the morning.
Yeah.
First of all, it will probably be colder.
Yeah. Right. Uh-huh.
And honestly, to me, is like that gives you that 2 hour boost in the morning
Yeah.
where you've just got the energy. So if you want to go work out, you want to go do all any of that stuff, you can do that right there.
Yeah. Yeah. But see, that's awesome. Like what you're starting to talk about, which I do none of this, but it's biohacking. It's trying to figure the right timing when you eat, when you exercise, when you sleep to
But so
create some
this,
sort
so
of
this is why I want to get into to a medical device company that makes like GCMs, glucose monitors, because I think after glucose comes insulin. After insulin comes testosterone and estrogen and cortisol and all the other hormones in our body that affect the way we act. And imagine having a device that you wear that's linked to your phone that can tell you in real time
Oh yeah,
how how you're doing cortisol wise. Oh man, you're stressed out. Look at your
yeah.
cortisol levels. They're through the roof. Go take a nap, have some tea, whatever. Have
Do
a hot
5 minutes of
cocoa,
meditation.
right?
Yeah, right.
But
Yeah,
and then it knows you. It knows your genetics. It knows
yeah,
your ethnicity. It knows your medical history,
yeah.
and so you're able to get specific response or specific guidance from your from an AI or an app on your phone based upon what's going on at that moment in your body.
Well,
I think that will be amazing. Then you can hack the hell out of your body at that point.
yeah. Well, to some extent, we have that now. I don't know if you have an Aura ring or if you know what an Aura ring is. Actually, okay, you do know what an Aura ring is. I have one that I don't wear, which is great. Whatever, paying $5.99 a month for nothing. But that is kind of cool because if you see that, it tells you how much your sleep is and it gives you recommendations.
Pay
Oh,
$5.99 a month.
yeah.
I guess I'm grandfathered in because I've had them for years.
Oh, okay. Well, good for you, actually. Yeah, because that was a big thing. It's like it's your data, but apparently it's got to pay for the app and it's got to pay for this and that
Yeah,
or
no.
whatever.
So I got one even before COVID because my boss was into biohacking. She got
Oh, interesting.
into the bulletproof coffee that
Hmm.
Dave Asprey does,
Yeah.
and so we read Dave Asprey stuff. She would go to the bulletproof conferences and the like. And honestly, it's conceptually that got me into the concept of fat isn't bad for you, right? At that
Well, it
point,
depends on what kind of fat, right?
yeah, yeah. But in general, we've been told all fat's bad for you, and that's not true.
Yeah, no, it's just
And
what is the fat around your stomach, or it's the one that goes in your
well, no,
liver.
you're talking visceral fat. I'm talking about dietary fat, stuff you eat.
Oh, well, it can be bad and can not be bad. It depends on what
So
else you're eating and whether
and
it
by not eating fat, we make ourselves fatter
could be. Yeah.
because we tend to eat carbs. I mean, if you're not eating fat, you got two other sources of calories: protein and carbs.
Yeah, well, the thing is though, if you eat a lot of fat just by itself, you're probably fine. If you eat fat with a lot of sugar, okay, now you're in trouble.
Carbs, again, it's the carbs.
Now you're in trouble. Yeah. And I'm talking about the processed carbs, like literally eating like a ton of fat with like 7 donuts. I mean, now you're just trying to kill yourself at that point.
Well, I mean, you get bacon and eggs in the morning, but then you get pancakes with syrup.
Bacon and eggs, fine. Pancakes and syrup, not so fine.
Then you're mainlining sugar and flour, right? And
Yeah.
flour is a processed carb. So
Probably not the
uh,
best thing, actually.
yeah, no, but so the idea is what I was getting at though was that even though we even though we know it's not going to hurt us, it is a hard decision to do something that's uncomfortable.
Yeah, but you know what that's called, Chris? That's called discipline. And that's
Yes.
and that's called I'm prioritizing my future self against right now.
And so discipline usually means there's an action associated with the discipline.
Almost in every case, yes.
In which
Or it could
case,
be are an action of not doing something. It could be a no action sort of thing, right?
but what I'm getting at here is I think we aren't defaulting to action enough, so I don't think we're disciplined enough.
Oh my God, of course not. I'm so
So
not disciplined.
so we discipline is the idea of oh gosh, well, I want to remember which study this was. They did a study of swimmers and they found out that people who just kept trying harder did better than people with a natural ability.
As a general rule, it is surprising how well just beating on something works.
Yes. So the discipline and the what's the word when you're going after something nonstop?
You're driven or obsessed or
Yeah, it was another word I'm picking up, but yeah, exactly. The idea being that you don't give up.
you're committed or whatever it is. Yeah, you don't give it. Yes.
So when they looked at people who have natural swimming ability versus people who had less natural swimming ability but had a much better ethic of just
Yeah.
trying,
Yeah.
the success was more in the person who tried.
Yeah.
They were
Yeah.
able to grow more and the like. So
Yeah.
it the idea here is we need to build the discipline.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
to have discipline, you have to realize failure is part of things you do.
100%. Yeah. 100%.
Right?
I mean, look at
So
Elon Musk. His damn
the
rocket
discipline to
blew
do
up today.
harder things with an understanding that you might fail.
You might fail, but this is David Goggins stuff. He's literally there's the war is in your mind. He goes, that's why I force myself to do these things. And here's the thing. He actually, who was it? Huberman, Andrew Huberman, said that he now has scientific proof that when you do those hard things, there's an area in your brain that grows that now allows you to do harder things. It's like a gym, you get stronger mentally.
Well, if you think about this, right, and you look at someone like Musk or someone else who's got these crazy ideas, and they're able to do things with companies or with whatever in groups that no one thought was possible,
Yeah, right,
right? And
right.
they did it.
Yeah,
And
right.
it's like, what's going through the mind if someone says, "I want to do X," and everyone around them says, "No, it's not going to happen. You can't do
Yeah,
that," right? And then they do it, and the next time I'm going to do X plus one,
yeah.
and it's like, "Oh no, you can't do it," and then you do it, and then the next time it's going to be X plus two, and X plus three, and X plus four, and X plus five, and pretty soon, you've shown, and everyone's still around. You're going to go, "No, you can't do it," because again, they may trust your ability to get crap done,
Yeah.
but they still don't see how it can happen. And
They,
I think
yeah,
even the person with a vision may not see how it can happen,
yeah, right.
but they trust that it can.
Well, that's called faith, Chris, and we've talked about faith before, actually. So I have faith, right, in our podcast, in our ability that if we just keep grinding on it, that eventually more and more people are going to start watching our podcasts.
Well, and my faith is that as we do this more, we'll get more refined in how we do this. We'll
Oh my
approach
gosh,
things
yeah,
in a
we'll get
more in a
better.
more methodology, in a better framework.
Yeah, we'll have a better framework, a process. We'll get better at speaking. We'll get better at listening. Right.
And I think, we need to get people to give us more comments. We need feedback to help guide
Yeah.
how this becomes something that actually is more meaningful for people. Because I love to talk to you, and I love, just bouncing this stuff back and
Yeah.
forth. But that idea, if we ask a series of questions, if we can teach people to ask a series of questions of themselves, so the tool based on a framework, right?
Well,
And this is what we talked about last week.
yeah, I know. So we need to keep developing that. Like I just developed one for myself. Like every day I'm gonna have just one thing. If I just if nothing else happens, but I get this one thing, then I move forward. Actually,
But
but
that's your tool.
that's a tool. But that
What's the framework?
well, I think it's. I mean, I guess I have a kind of broad. I view that's a framework of thinking, right? Of just
See,
taking care of one thing. Baby
yeah.
steps. I mean, it could be. I mean, we should work on a definition of framework.
So your framework is you're going to challenge yourself on a daily basis to do something, and the way you've decided to do that is by asking yourself a hard question every day.
I'm gonna have not a hard question. Well, not necessarily hard. The question's easy. Like, what's one thing? What's the one thing if I get it done today, it's gonna move me forward in a big way or make other things easier.
But I guess what I go back to is your framework is that you can get better by doing something every day,
Oh, of course. Yeah.
right?
Of
That's
course.
I
Yeah.
mean, to me, that's the base framework you've got. So if you decided I want to be more grateful, you could ask yourself a question about being more grateful.
Oh,
If
yeah.
you want, so the framework is the same. The tool or the specific action you've decided upon is aimed at some particular aspect of growth.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, yeah, I think I give framework kind of it's a lot of latitude. I mean, maybe we want to tighten up the definition at some
I
point.
prefer a tighter definition of framework, and I don't see the framework as the actual action. I see the framework as how you build your actions.
That's fair enough. I mean, it's kind of a way of thinking. It's a way of approaching a problem. Like I consider Jamar's like 3-point framework. I mean, I would call that a framework. That's a really powerful framework, right? Because he doesn't even have to be that good, but because of the tools that he has, he just levels himself up significantly,
Mhm. I
which is
mean,
awesome.
yeah, I mean that methodology is, yeah, again, methodology framework. Ew.
Methodology, framework, process, structure,
Process to me
checklist.
is downstream. Methodology and framework are upstream.
Okay.
So I think I need a way to visualize this so we're using the same
We
terminology.
need to make a framework about how to think about frameworks.
We need we need to diagram it out, definitely.
But I think that'd be good. I think that'd be maybe what we should start doing
But
is
like one of the things we were talking about earlier was trust, right? I think
yeah.
one of the things we are, I think we're pretty good at, but we need to get good at, and we need everyone else in America, in the world, to get good at, is getting good at trust. Getting good at understanding others enough that you can trust that things will occur in a certain way. And you can have
Well,
levels of trust, right?
oh, of course.
I trust this person to act in this way 80% of the time.
Yeah, right, right, right. Always put some confidence interval on it. Yeah, I think that's good. I think, but here's the thing, Chris. If our viewers see us grow and make progress, that's called leadership, right? And now they're going to start to follow us because they're going to be like, hey, these two clowns, they're fun to listen to, but they're actually getting better. They're
I think
actually,
no. So what were the three things in Jamar's speech today?
I can't
So
remember.
his speech was about the three things you need for coaching, right? To be a coach.
Yeah, hang
Number
on.
one, you need to care. Number one, you need to care.
Hang on, I got
Number
it here.
two, you need to walk the walk or
Walk the
walk the
talk,
talk.
walk the talk,
And then number three is you need to be available to people, right?
ready to reach out and help.
So I think in many ways we're doing those things because this is the topic we care about,
Yeah, yeah,
right? And I think we're willing to put in the time and the effort.
yeah.
The thing you're talking about, if we grow, that's walking the talk. That's if we can actually develop ways for us to get better
Yeah.
at common sense, critical thinking, all those types of aspects that we think are valuable tools
Yes.
for people to have. That's that. And then the third thing is we're committed to producing these and to adjusting as needed. If we get input, we can adjust as needed.
Yeah, of course. I'm always open to just and I think that'll happen as we bring more guests on and we have more conversations. I mean, slow. It's it feels like we're not making progress, but I think we're making progress, Chris, because slowly we're starting to talk about issues of like frameworks and structures of thinking, and we need to go back to like practicing attacks with different logical arguments so we get better at defending them. And slowly over time, even though we don't see it, we're just getting better, right? Like I'm getting better at not jujitsu anymore because I don't do that, but getting better at Greek because I have a Greek coach and I have an objective every single week, and I'm starting to learn new words, and it's fascinating. Oh, just for fun, let me give you a couple of Greek words actually that were kind of fascinating. So
Okay.
one Greek word, it's called ego, and it means I, and it's
Mm-hmm.
interesting. That's called a gloss. There's other things that are another Greek word I just learned a couple days ago. It's anthropos, which means like human beings and everything. And here's the thing: I struggle with it, and it's so frustrating, and I hate it when I'm studying this sort of stuff. But I get rewarded because now I can look at a Greek text, and I'm like, oh, I know that word. I know it's not completely Greek to me anymore. There's a couple words that I'm like, oh, I know what they're saying. I got that, you know? And so it's this slow process. Like my goal in Greek is at the end of this year at Christmas time, I want to be able to read First John, which is a book in the Bible, in Greek, and actually halfway understand what it's saying. And I chose that because it's the simplest book. It's got the least number of words. But still with that, I still need like over 600 words. And I know about 30 right now. So there's quite a bit of work, you know?
Well, I mean, I remember the words you have available to you
Yes.
will impact your ability to think.
Oh my gosh. Oh, it's changed me dramatically. And the little bit of math that I'm doing, I see things differently from a different perspective now.
I remember I was talking to a friend of mine. He's passed away, but he was from South Africa, and he could speak English, Dutch, Afrikaans, and he spoke Zulu. I think it was.
Yeah.
He spoke Zulu. Um, and one of the things that he mentioned was Zulu is a very simple language. He said he was like the entire language only had a few hundred words or something.
Oh,
like
interesting. Okay.
so you couldn't have really complex conversations
Right.
because it didn't have the concepts.
Enough words, right?
And it occurs to me that your ability to think about something really is about how complex the language is
Yeah.
that people are in, right?
Yeah.
And so English borrows from so many languages, but I think the English language still has more words than any other language.
Oh, I think
Over
it's got
half a million words.
half a million words or something. And we
Yeah.
only use like a
And
few.
yeah, well, the average American stats, as I recall, so these stats are old, so I don't know if it's changed, but the average American knows 3,000 to 5,000 words.
That sounds about right. Yeah.
The average professor knows about 10,000 words.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Interesting.
So if and that's out of 500,000 words. So
yeah, that's a lot of words.
if you want to get good at being able to think, and more important in my mind, is not just the thinking, it's to communicate what you think.
Yeah.
This is where your Jordan Petersons of the world are able to they pick the word that has the nuance that fits what they're trying to get across.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's just amazing. I will have to sit there and use 5 words to kind of dance around what the topic I'm trying to say, and he can get the one word that gets
Yeah.
you exactly there.
And you know what? You may not even get it. You might use 30 words and you still don't get it.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen this? It's almost like a deja vu, not deja vu, that's the wrong thing. But it's like you've been struggling with this idea for a long time, maybe like years. And then somebody will just come up in 2 sentences. And in particular, what you'll say is that's right. You're not gonna say they're right. You're looking for that's right. And you're like, oh my God, that's the exact set of words to describe this thing. And I couldn't fully see it, but now I own it. I got it, right?
So there's this guy on YouTube who works on helping you build your lexicon, your
Okay,
dictionary of
yeah,
words that you know, right?
yeah,
He says you should figure out what are the words you normally use.
yeah.
And so his thing was record yourself and then get a when you use one of the tools that writes out that creates your transcript basically,
Gotcha, yeah.
feed that into one of those word clouds
Hmm.
or word count and figure out what words do you use most often. And you kind of figure out these are my base words.
Yeah, right.
And then figure out words that you want to expand upon. So listen to like the Jordan Petersons, the Ben Shapiro's, and the Dawkins, and all these different
Yeah,
famous people. Listen to the words they use. Stephen Fry is a great one. He's got so many words, right? Then you listen to them, and you need to add to your lexicon.
yeah, yeah.
But he actually also created a tool. It's an AI tool that's supposed to help you build your lexicon.
Yeah.
It's called Nounce, like pronounce without the pro.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Nounce.ai. I went on and looked at it. I think it's still a little bit in the beta phase because
Yeah,
it was out. But they had Jordan Peterson, Martin Luther King, all these people that you could kind of listen to or
yeah,
watch and kind of figure out how to expand so
yeah.
you could be a better communicator.
That's an awesome idea. So this one thing in Greek, I'm still struggling with this, but there's a word in Greek called chronos. You're probably familiar with it. It just means
Mhm.
time. And
Yep.
so that's the tick-tock, right? And so a lot of the Greeks, first century Greeks, they fully understood that concept of time, tick tock, right? But they had another concept of time, and I don't know what the word is. I'm sorry, but it's about experiencing a moment or like,
Kairos.
oh, is that what? Oh, good for you.
No,
Where
we talked
time,
about this. We talked about this a couple in one of our episodes,
yeah,
and we
I
got a short
forgot.
about it.
Yeah,
Yeah, Chronos and Kairos. Chronos is about time. Kairos is about being in the moment.
being in
And
the moment.
so basically, it's we talked about it. It's focus versus attention.
Yeah, yeah. So it's
So when
interesting. So
you
it's just
focus
yeah,
ahead, that's Chronos. When you're giving attention at this moment, that's that's
yeah. There you go. That's
Kairos.
interesting. I need to go back and study that because the Bible talks about when it talks about what Jesus did, it talks about it like in the present moment, like he was baptizing. Well, really, he baptized like 2,000 years ago, but like it seems, which then you start thinking in terms of time. It lets you break out of this very linear thing in time. It just lets you think in different words. But if I didn't have that word, I mean, my brain wouldn't be able to think about those things. I know the experience, but I just couldn't put a word on it. I couldn't put a label on it. And yeah, you hear being in the moment. You're like, well, what does that mean, right? It's not as precise until you study it. So I have a little bit better understanding of that now.
I've started to question time.
Yeah, well, of course you should. It's a very complex topic.
The concept that maybe everything is happening at the same time,
Yeah,
but we don't experience it that way.
yeah, right, exactly. Yeah,
Right? We experience things linearly through time, but if you've got an all-powerful force out there that knows what's going to happen, isn't it just all happened?
yeah, yeah, right. That's the argument, right? So here's the general argument: is like, okay, God's all powerful, and so and in the Bible it talks about this over and over that we're predestined. There's chosen ones. There's things that are not free will, but then it also talks about free will, and they seem contradictory, but the Bible talks about it in the terms of that they're coexisting together in perfect harmony. And that's because, and let's assume that's true because it's written in the Bible. Let's just take it as true. That means that we don't fully understand. We're just a fish in water, and there's a lot that we don't see. So it's described to the fact that God is not bound by time. He sees everything happening simultaneously. And it's like, how do you even wrap your head around that? You know?
Yeah, so well, if everything did happen simultaneously and we're the ones who are experiencing it non-simultaneously.
Could be. I mean, it seems like, people say, oh, time flows like a river. We flow along with the river, right? But is it possible to swim upstream? Is it possible to go back a little bit? I mean, is that even technically possible?
If
Einstein's
all
equation
events
says
are
it
if all
is.
events are happening at the same time, then history is happening now and the future is happening now.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. So then the way God describes himself, which is just bizarre, is he describes himself as I am. It's I am, not I was, not before. It's just I am. I am present, past, future. I am everywhere simultaneously across all time. And I'm like, what the hell, man? How do you even wrap your head around that?
this made me think of the Groundhog Day quote. Bill Murray says, "Maybe God isn't omnipotent. Maybe he's just been around so long he knows everything."
Could be. I know.
I mean,
I
because
mean,
if you think right, because it goes, do you think you're God because he's living the same day over and over
yeah,
and
over
over?
and over again. Yeah. And it's interesting though because this is maybe when I learned more about this. So God exists outside of time. I am. So there was nothing before God. God always existed. But even saying that, we're saying it through the lens of this linear river flowing time that we live in
Nothing before means that you've got a time element, right? Before has to happen before something.
before something else. And so the argument always is, well, okay, so like who created God, right? Or what happened before God existed? And you can even talk to some really advanced physicists, and they're like, with the way that what we understand with the universe, that question doesn't even make sense, right? That question applies to planet Earth and it's who is your dad, what
But
happened.
that's
But
right. When you look at like Greek mythology,
yeah,
right, and you study, with the gods and the titans, and then and you kind of work your way back,
yeah,
and it's like, well, where do they come from? Where do they come from? Where you could just see, oh, here's Zeus. He's the god of
yeah,
lightning or whatever. Okay, where did he come from? Oh, he came from the belly of his father.
yeah,
Yeah, where did he come from?
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
and I can see this conversation going on. It's like, where did this come from? Where did it come?
Well, and you do, and so there always has to be something before. That's just, but God is not a created being, and I have no idea how that even works, right? According to the Bible,
So there is no before. You're saying.
there is no before. He is the definition of God is I am. Period. That's all he needs to say. Now he also says something like I'm the Alpha and the Omega, I'm the beginning and the end. But even that's not correct, right? God just is.
Well, because there is no beginning or the end if that's the case.
Yeah, right. Exactly. He created that simulation that we live in, and we're bound by the rules of the simulation we live in. He's outside of that as a non-created being, right? And it's like you can't even wrap your head around, well, how could that even be possible? Because everything's created.
Well, so if he created the universe and the earth and all of that,
And the whole
did he
shebang.
create it when he came into existence? Or did he create it at some point after he was in existence?
See, that's a
And
question.
then we're getting into before and after now.
But like yeah, no, you're using the wrong words, right?
Yeah, so what words would work?
I am. That's it.
But doesn't that apply to us? We are.
We are. We're eternal beings. Technically, we're going to live forever, but we were created. And this is a kind of a point. I believe that we're all created from God with a why, with a purpose. We each have been knitted together with the way the DNA, our preferences, to do something. And so that's why I feel so guilty, Chris, because I'm thinking I waste a lot of time. So I've been created by God to do something, and I'm just sitting here eating donuts, watching stupid YouTube, right, videos. It's like I wasn't made for that. It's like the lion locked in a cage. It's like, no, you're more than that, right? You're not what you're supposed to be. And I believe that's true for all of us as well, too.
Okay, let me ask you
And I know
this.
it sounds like a motivational speech. Be all that you can
If
be, you know?
if you're wasting time,
Yeah,
you're feeling guilty because you're wasting time.
a little bit, yeah.
Isn't that wouldn't that be known already? If
Yeah, of
wouldn't God
course.
already realize that you're a
Of course
time
God
waster?
does that. Of course.
And so okay, this is the whole predestination thing,
Of
right?
course. Which we've been
Wouldn't
talking about for hundreds of years, right?
wouldn't the fact that whatever you bring to the world, the universe, is already defined. So no matter what you do, the amount of value you bring to the universe is going to happen. Now, it
If
could be a huge amount that you just haven't done yet, or it could
yeah,
be minimal amount that you because you're on the path that you're on.
if you view that as contra, if you view that, which we do, we view that either there's predestination or there's free will, right? And what the Bible teaches is they're both going on simultaneously, and how is that even possible, right? Because we're in the simulation, man. We're not outside of it, right? We're trapped inside.
Well, I think you need to. I think you start coming into definitions of predestination and free will at that.
Yeah, well, yeah, of course.
Because you could say, oh, if something is predestined to happen, then if the outcome is predestined to happen,
Yeah.
then no matter what you do, no matter what choices you make, the outcome is the outcome.
Yeah, it's
Right?
interesting. When you talk to characters, or not talk to characters, but when you look at Bible stories, a lot of people fight God, right? Like Moses said, "No, come on, God, I don't have the words." And then God says, "Listen." It's like and he makes it clear to people. It's like, "Listen, you're not doing this. I'm doing it. I'm just working through you. So this is going to get done with or without you." You know?
Okay, so but now let's look at it. So the person who lives their life and doesn't add much to the total sum, you're
Yeah.
saying God said, okay, this person's not doesn't need to do much. Is that what we're saying? So so let's look at it this way.
Could be. I mean, yeah,
So
maybe.
you're predestined in your life to do whatever you're supposed to do,
Yes.
right? And you could try as hard as you want to do that, or you could try as little as you want to do
Yeah.
that. And the idea here being the outcome's not going to matter if you challenge yourself and you try and you grow and you get better and stronger and all. The outcome is the outcome. Whereas if you took it easy and ate ice cream and donuts and sat on the couch, the outcome is the outcome. So then the only thing you're saying is you can lead a I don't want to say it's a virtuous life. You can lead an aggressive life of growth and becoming more, becoming better, or you can live a life of not doing that.
Yeah.
The outcome will be the same.
Maybe.
Then the free will is which do you choose, and is one inherently better than the other?
That's
The outcome,
assuming.
hey, the outcome doesn't matter.
Well, see, that assumes that there's only one outline. Many people think in multiple universes that there's billions or unlimited different options, and then each choice lives in a different universe,
Okay,
which
but
is
then
a
the point
different way
being
of thinking
the
about it.
outcome is the outcome, right? And you're saying God already knows what the outcome is, so the outcome is the outcome.
Yeah.
And so whether you're in universe 1 or universe 1,022,000, the point being, you are going to live your life, and your free will is to live your life the way you live it.
Yes.
The outcome is already predetermined. The only thing is you now have to make a value judgment of how you're going to live your life,
Yeah.
because the outcome doesn't matter. The
Well,
outcome is already set.
I don't know that doesn't matter. It could be that there's a billion different universes, each one with a different version of you that's made a different series of
Yeah, I
choices.
like the idea that it doesn't matter, because that means that it really is on you to do the best, to be the best you can be, and to find the discipline and to find the value structure in yourself to achieve more and to do
I think
more.
that's fine. And so this whole God thing, this whole Christian thing, it's like Jordan Peterson's. I just decided that I'm going to believe that because I think it's beneficial to me. I have no
I thought he
idea
said
if it's true.
he's gonna act as if God
Act as if
exists,
God's true. Yeah, act as if.
because to do otherwise would be silly, is his viewpoint,
I mean, I don't know,
right?
it's silly, but
So
yeah, it's a
well,
choice.
particularly because in most religious practices, the right way to live your life is something that's beneficial to society.
I think so.
Most 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 religious texts and books talk about how to live life in a way that helps the society.
Yeah, and
So
that's the
so
part.
if you live that, even if at the end of you find out God wasn't true, you lived a good life.
I think so. Could be, could be, could be,
Right?
could be not.
I
I
think
don't
so.
know.
So
I don't know.
it's a good argument to make, saying that the values and structure of religion, in this case we're talking Christian religion, but in religion as a whole, means that you live a good life. And
Yeah,
if at the end of it God's there, great. If the end of it God's not there, still great.
yeah, because I think I'm not going to know if he's not there. I'm only going to know if he's there, right?
But
So
you live the life that followed principles that would be
I think
beneficial.
so, and it's probably going to be better for society as well too, because religion definitely is a glue that sort of prevents the really bad stuff from happening for most people.
Religion used to be okay. Let's go back. Religion used to be how we aligned people,
Yeah, it still is,
right?
right?
So this is kind of where education came along.
Yeah,
Education became how we align people with I think religion taking a back seat to education.
yeah, yeah, because it's always the God is in the gaps, and all these gods that were created were just They just created them because they couldn't really explain
So
what.
we had spirituality, we had faith,
Yeah,
then we had science and science and technology,
yeah.
and now how are we aligned now? What's the alignment now? Where are we
Well,
getting our alignment now?
here's a question for me. No matter how many times we go through this argument, we always come to one conclusion that I guess we need a little bit of faith, right? To get there.
Mm, yeah, no, I'm not sure how that relates to my question though.
Well, I don't know. It may not relate. I just
So,
thought it was a
because
good point.
again, talking in cycles and the like, and I don't know. I'm now looking at a 2,000 year cycle, and we go back to Christ, right? So,
Yeah.
or even before that, we go to the Jews before that and the like. But the idea was tribes formed. They came up with religion as a way to address what they couldn't understand and
Yeah.
what they
Right.
didn't know.
Right.
Though that developed over time, science got bigger and bigger over time. Science then kind of, you good?
Yeah, that's good.
Mm.
You know, these crazy people, they keep calling me it's some loan thing, and it's like they're
Oh yeah,
just
mine is they want to buy my house every day.
yeah.
So then basically science began to outstrip religion as a way to explain things.
Yes,
And
right.
we began to understand more of the world around us, which meant we had more control over the world around
Yes,
us, which
right.
means we
We
could
could
affect
literally
our
make things
lives, improve
happen.
our lives, make things, right?
Yes,
So that happened. And so I would say religion took a back seat to science or
yes. Yep.
and learning, that kind of
100%.
learning, right?
Yep.
Um, and kind of in the gap between, you had the philosophers, the one,
Yes.
like
Right.
Plato and also the Newton and those kind of guys. And so now we're past that. People begin to lose faith now in science. We're at a point where we question science in a way that we didn't before, because there's something now we want that science isn't giving us the answers to.
Well,
So
yeah,
before
because
we,
we're wrong so many times, right?
but that's the whole scientific method, was it was okay to be wrong. The
Yeah.
problem now is it's got the scientific method science has been corrupted by politics or whatever you
Yeah.
want, whatever
Right.
other goals are associated with it. So, and you can even say, I guess you can even say that of like organized religion, right? It got corrupted as power got structured, and
Totally
then
corrupt. Yeah.
and so now we have education and schooling, and that got corrupted as certain elements of view to control of
Yeah.
our education. So
Yeah.
there's no faith in that, and I think that actually hurts science just as much as them being wrong.
Yeah.
So the whole pandemic thing where we were being told to do whatever to deal with COVID, that we lost a lot of faith in science from that. But I think we were already losing faith in education,
Yeah.
based upon the fact that it had been co-opted by mostly
Yeah.
liberal thinking.
Yeah.
So now what's the next thing? So both those institutions have gone through their phase where we don't trust them anymore. What's the next thing that happens? What's the
Well,
third thing?
I think what's happening is like the belief in God is coming back a little bit. I think it's swung and now it's
You
coming
think
back
it's only
just a
two
little
things?
bit.
I think just like ethos, pathos, and logos, it's three things. I think we had ethos, we had God, we had authority. Then we got logos, we got logic, we got education, we got
Yeah.
science. I think we're in a phase where we want pathos, we want the feelings, we want the emotions, and that's what's taken over is
Yeah.
it's all feeling, and that's why at some point, I think that I don't know if it's a short-lived thing or if it's going to be a long-term thing, but the feelings, like people feel that society is unfair.
Yeah.
I think, why do young people gravitate towards socialism and communism, whereas older
It's
people
more
don't,
fair. Yeah. More fair.
right? Because it's about fairness, and fairness is about feelings, right? Because it's like, oh, it's not fair that someone had a harder life than someone
Yeah.
else. I'm like, fair's got nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
It's not fair that certain people have rights that others don't in the legal system. That's not fair.
Yeah.
But it's saying that, it's not fair. I wasn't born 6.5 feet tall with a huge physique, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's not fair. But
I guess.
you're not fighting for my right to have to have that kind of a
Yeah.
body. So I'm wondering what's the third thing. Because I think the number three is pretty magical for a lot of reasons.
Oh, it's very magical. 1, 3.
And so after spiritual,
Yeah.
which is your which in this case I think is your ethos. After logic, which is your and learning and science, which is your logos. What is your pathos? What is the emotional part? And maybe that's it. Is like we end up being controlled by our emotions.
Yeah.
We get the UBI that pays off our desires, so we don't cause a problem for the rich and the powerful. And society begins to be controlled by a very even more controlled by a very small elite, and they control us by our emotions.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it all
And
comes.
then religion comes back after that.
Yeah, I think it talks about. Well, let's go back to the feel-good hormones, whatever those were: dopamine, serotonin, endorphins, and oxytocin. We're basically just drug addicts, right?
Yeah, we get rid of the oxytocin, we get rid of the other endorphins, and we just concentrate on the dopamine.
Yeah, just which is short-term pleasure. That's kind of what we talked about at the beginning. This is probably a good time to wrap this up because I'm hungry. It wraps up because it's like I'll do anything to get that dopamine, even if it means a cheat, right? Even if it means I'll do drugs, alcohol, porn, sex, shopping, whatever it is. I get that immediate dopamine hit, doom scrolling through YouTube. I'm getting some pleasure and pain simultaneously, right? Because I know I shouldn't be doing this, but I just keep doing it. I just can't stop.
Yep. Now, the dopamine hit, I think, is what we've gotten used to, and I think technology has made that so possible.
Yeah.
The
So,
internet has made it more possible. TV and radio were the beginning,
yeah.
radio, TV, heck, maybe even the printing press, because that suddenly led it to more people. Although most people couldn't read at the time,
Yeah.
but bit by bit, we've leveled up people, and we've leveled up the way we communicate with them
Yeah.
to the point where now we've taken out all the roadblocks in communication that actually served a purpose.
Yeah.
Those
Yeah.
roadblocks that in communication served a purpose. They gave you time to think. They
Yeah.
gave you time to understand. They gave you time to judge things. Anymore, we don't have that anymore. They've stripped all that out. So now it's one way mass communication at speed. And the way they keep you is they give you the dopamine hit. How do I keep you watching my stuff? Dopamine,
Yeah.
dopamine. How do I do that? I push the limit on what's acceptable in
Yeah.
storytelling. I mean, you look at the shows we get on cable and and HBO and stuff, and the amount of nudity and sex that we have today compared to what was acceptable 20 years
Yeah.
ago,
Yeah.
right? It's amazing how much we've done. You look at like the violence in a movie like The Godfather.
Yeah.
That's nothing compared to what you find in the
I
violence in
know.
movies today.
I know it's crazy, but it's like there's a part in the Bible that talks about that people have so chosen that literally it talks about the fact that they're so deprived that they've gone down the death spiral so far that they may not be able to come back, right?
So is it the person who has the power in the situation, or is it the leaders of the society that have the powers in this situation?
Definitely a combination. I mean,
Who's the responsible party? Who's the one that's going to end up in the pearly gate in front of the pearly gates, and who's the one who's not going to end up in front of the
I
pearly
do
gates?
not know, but I will tell you this actually. God says in Revelation, the fact that there's going to be a lot of you that come to me and say, Lord, Lord, look at what I did. I did all this good thing. And he's like, I never knew you. You're an asshole, right? Sorry, I said asshole. Shouldn't say that.
It's okay. You're from California.
And he's just going to reject a bunch of people, and they're going to be kind of shocked, right? Because look at how he talked to the Pharisees and the Sadducees way back when. He's like, "You guys are the teacher of the law. I mean, you technically know the law, but you're missing the whole point." So he would. That's why they killed him. They hated him because he's messing
That's
with their
the
power.
job of lawyers anymore is to find the loopholes, not the law itself, right?
Yeah,
And
you're
that's
missing.
why that's why Elon Musk complaining about the IRS tax code is like there's all these laws. There's so many that if you've got enough money, you can find ways
Yeah, loopholes.
to bypass what you and I, as normal people who don't have those options, can do.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, sorry. Before we were done, I was talking to my wife about this. When I lived in Japan,
yeah.
I was shocked because the Japanese government told me how much I owed in taxes.
What say that? Owed in taxes? Well, they know that. The IRS knows that.
Yeah. So they actually sent out during tax season. Okay, here's how much you owe in taxes. You need to pay this by this time.
Gotcha. Yeah,
And I didn't have to prepare anything. I didn't have to do anything. Right.
yeah.
So basically, they don't bother with like you get incentives for this or that or the
Right.
other
Opposite
thing.
this and
They
that.
just say we need taxes. This is how much you owe us, and
Yeah.
it wasn't a huge bill. Now, admittedly, I was a foreigner, so I was at a lower tax bracket. I was at like 7%. I think the
Oh.
average Japanese person was at 15%. So I was
Oh
like
wow.
half
Okay.
that. But I'm looking at that going, that makes sense to me. and there's no effort on my part. And when I told them that I had to do my own taxes in the US, they were like shocked. And I'm like, there's a lot of under the table money that would not get reported. I
Of
get all
course,
that kind
yeah.
of stuff, but just think of how simple the tax code would be.
Yeah.
Now, my other thought is how many people will go out of business and how many jobs would be lost. How much is the tax code supporting our economy in the way of jobs?
Yeah. Well, you got to realize the tax code was written by rich people for rich people. And a lot of people will say, oh, see, it's rich people. But I'm telling you, though, it's like, don't get so bummed out because almost the average person can use these tools as well to minimize their taxes, actually, if they're aware of them. I mean, it's like good stuff goes to everybody, even bad people, right? I mean,
Yeah, but I mean, the problem here is that rich people are in a position to buy whatever they want without income.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But Chris, okay, listen. I mean, there's strategies you can use. Do an S corp. It's a flow through corp action, right? So now
You
you
think
don't
the
have to
guy working at McDonald's is going to be doing an S corp or an LLC or even a sole proprietorship?
not at McDonald's actually, but he does have a choice. He can do something else.
This is the issue that I think comes up is if you've got enough wealth, if you've got enough wealth in assets,
Yeah.
you just borrow against the assets.
Okay, it's way easier if you have money. There's no question about that. But it is
Yes, so
possible to
so
go from
so
zero to
I need $1 million this year to live my life and to grow my whatever.
fine.
And
Right.
I've got 5 million in assets, so I take a loan for $1 million
Of
out.
course, right.
Right? I don't pay taxes on the $1 million because
Because
it's
it's a
not even
loan. Of course
a
not.
loan.
Right. Yeah.
And then I go buy more assets.
Yes, right. Uh-huh.
And so the next year I've got 6 million in assets.
Yeah, right.
And I borrow against it and I do
Yeah.
this. And I pay it back. But the point is I am avoiding paying any taxes while growing my wealth.
Yeah, but that's how the system is set up.
I know. And isn't that a problem?
Maybe. I don't know. I
I mean,
mean,
so this is, I used to think that wealth tax is stupid, wealth tax is stupid. And I'm like, I don't know. Is it stupid in our structure to have a wealth tax?
see, I don't know. See, I'm much more practical in this case. I'm not going to argue changing it because the chance of me changing it is zero, actually. But what I want to do is I want to understand the rules and I want to try to apply those to myself, actually.
I think you can't avoid looking at this and doing something. And the reason why I say that is because as the rift between people with money and without money increases, as the dollar gets devalued from printing more of it or whatever else we do with it, as the debt goes up, the people with assets go up in value. When there's more money in the system, the asset's worth more money.
That's the
So
point.
if the system has $1 trillion today and $2 trillion tomorrow, and you've got $1 million house tomorrow, it's a $2 million house
Yeah,
because
right.
that's just the way it works.
But you have inflation, so now the value of that is not the same, right?
But the inflation is what's driving up the cost of the. So
Yeah,
basically, the cost of the assets will go up, but your cash goes down. And poorer people have less assets and more cash,
of
so
course.
they're losing money at a faster rate. So you're going to cause more and more distinction between the classes
Oh,
until you get
absolutely.
to a point where somebody's going to rise up and lead those masses,
Yes,
and that's where we actually get bloodshed. And
yes,
that's the thing is, do
yes.
we have to accept the fact that there's going to be blood in the streets at some point? Is that
Oh,
just what's going to happen in America?
no, it's
Or
going to
can
happen.
we bypass that and come up with a way that people aren't getting left further and further behind?
It's
So the argument that you always hear when you have a conservative argue this point is that, oh, look at how much money someone has. So the poor person used to make, I don't know, $2 a day. Now they make $200 a day. Whatever it is, right? Great. So it's 100 times growth in how much in the dollar figure they make. How much buying power do they have today compared to
yeah, right.
before?
What can they buy, right? That's all.
Yeah. And what you've been hiding is that the system, the factory systems to be able to produce things are producing them cheaper. So people are buying more, buying new things that
Yeah,
they feel like their life's getting better. But when you look at it, they're getting further and further from the rich because
yeah,
the way the rich are able to build assets
yeah.
is not something that's accessible to all the lower classes, and that's what our problem is. It's rigged or designed or what designed is probably a better word
Designed, yes.
to
Great designed, yeah.
to allow it to happen this way. So then, and the people who are making the decisions, they're in a position to benefit from this as well. So they're not inclined to make the change,
No,
which
right.
means if no one's willing to address it, if you don't get a populist person who rides this and actually make some changes that at least appease the masses, you're going to end up with someone coming up from the masses who understands as well enough that can actually cause harm to people.
Yes, yes. And that's Read the Republic. It's all laid out. It's like 2,000 years ago that Plato figured it out, actually.
Mhm.
So what happens? It's a cycle. You do that, people rise up, they kill people, and then that guy becomes a leader, and he's good, and then he gets corrupt, and then just round and round
Well, I
we
mean,
go.
with 250 years, is it time that we have a revolution? Is that what we're saying?
We're having a revolution right now.
When I say revolution, I mean violence.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, we'll have some
I
violence.
mean, the Industrial Revolution was a revolution, but
We're
it's
having
not what I'm
violence
talking
right
about.
now, right? I mean, look at all the riots and the this, and I mean, we're having them now, where you are especially, right?
Riots. Which riots?
We had a bunch of. I just remember in
We,
California,
we,
there was a bunch of riots happening.
we've had a lot of protests. Is
Well,
that
no,
what
I'm
we mean?
talking about riots. I'm talking about ransacking, burning buildings, shooting people. That happens all the time.
I don't know in what time. Are you talking to us about something recently?
Yeah, okay, so go back to the Palestinian ones. You see Irvine, it happened
Oh, yeah,
actually,
yeah, yeah.
right? I mean,
Yeah,
I mean, maybe the scale of it, but
those
it's
were
happening. Oh,
protests.
okay, those are protests. Okay, whatever you want to call them, right?
Well,
But stuff got broken.
because ultimately, no matter what the goal of that group was it to sow dissent or was it to actually protest? It doesn't matter. The issue being a riot to me. Even the people who go crazy after a sports event
Yeah,
and tear up the streets, those aren't riots to me. Those are people just causing damage, right? They're generally not out there to hurt other people. So
no,
when I'm talking about a riot, I'm talking about actually going after people.
well, I don't know. Like everything, we got to define it or whatever. But
Well,
it's
yeah. So
not.
I don't consider that a revolution. I don't consider what happened up in the Black Lives Matter thing up in Portland or whatever that where they had lawlessness in the city, which is kind of just crazy. Uh, that's much closer to I think what we're talking about. But that on steroids is what I'm worried about.
Well, I mean, we may get there eventually. It's like it just depends if. So we're not far away. Um, from really bad stuff happening. If somebody goes wrong, the electric grid collapses, we're doing this, you will see that because we're only like I think some people talk we're only like 3 days away from like mass rioting. Actually, as soon as the food
Yeah.
shut off, the money shuts off, the water shuts off, the electricity shuts
Well,
off.
California, the water would shut off. I mean, there's that book Dry. If you haven't read it, it's a pretty good book. It's what would happen in Southern California if the water got shut off.
Yeah, yeah, there would
And
be
it's
bad
based right
stuff.
here in Orange County, so it's a lot of fun to read.
Yeah,
But I think the thing we need to realize though is even if you don't have that happen, even if you don't lose services, you've got the AI revolution going on right now.
yes, that's who knows where that's going to go.
So before the new jobs come out that people are retrained on,
Yeah, right.
they're going to lose jobs, which means you're going to have a large number of people who aren't needed to do jobs while the system resets and figures out how to give them jobs.
Oh yeah, we haven't been. I've been talking about that for 20 years. Yeah, technology and automation are going to.
Yeah, but I think I'm much more I'm much more aware of it in the past 6 months than I was in the past 6 years.
Oh, interesting. Okay, okay, all
Right?
right.
To me, I would have said it's 5 years off. I'm closer to saying it's 18 months off.
Probably remember AI doubles every 6 months, so who knows what it's going to be, right?
Oh, I think it doubles faster than that, but yeah.
Could be.
Uh, I think the idea here being companies are not going to replace people; they're going to replace people with tools,
Of course, actually, yeah,
and so those people will need to find out where to go.
yeah.
And some of them will be able to repurpose their work.
Some
Other
will,
ones won't be able
but
to.
most won't.
And then
Some
so
will.
what you'll end up is with a large group of people who are dissatisfied
Yes,
and dissatisfied at a level that they haven't been in the past and in
yes,
numbers they haven't been in the past.
yes. Right.
What happens then?
Well, then the government has to give them money just enough to appease them, so they don't kill everybody.
So then the government will print money because they don't have any money.
Yes, right.
So
Exactly.
they'll print money and the value of money goes down, which will impact everybody.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes,
And also, we need to talk to my friend about this. It'll also make the rich richer. It'll make the rich richer. It'll make the
yes,
poor poorer,
yes,
and it'll make everyone at the bottom of the ladder more poor. And
yes.
so then you're going to cause more resentment than
Yes.
just those people who didn't get it. So now
Yeah.
you're building a massive resentment. I
Yes.
think there's the outlets to that are going to be few. The outlets to that are going to be violence. If you
Well,
saw what happened January 6th with a few people upset at an election,
yeah,
imagine if you have people whose livelihoods are gone.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
They were
That,
upset because the guy they thought they should have won didn't win,
yeah,
right? No, now it's going to be I can't feed my family. I
Yeah.
can't survive. I
Right.
can't do that.
Yeah.
Right? I'm going to lose my house. I'm going to lose my business.
Yeah.
Whatever it is. That's going to cause, I think, a lot of a different reaction or a more drastic reaction.
Well, and I don't know that it'll be more drastic. I think it's just the scale of it's going to be wider, right? Instead of having 1,000 people do this, you may have 100,000 do it, right?
Or 1 million people,
Or
and they go in and who are they going to be blaming? Who are they going to be yelling at? They're going to be yelling at billionaires because that's one group
yes,
that always
right.
gets targeted, right? And you're going to be going after government officials,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Because it's always the government's fault when something doesn't work perfectly.
Yeah. Always. Yeah.
So, yeah, and once you start attacking the government and the billionaires, they're gonna hunker down because they got to protect themselves.
Yeah.
And pretty soon we're gonna end up in with police protection for all these people. It's
Yeah.
gonna be. I don't know. I just don't know how
Well,
that.
it's going to isolate it, but this has been going on for 50 years. I mean, the rich is getting richer and the poor is getting poorer, actually.
Yes, but just like everything else, it accelerates.
It accelerates,
Right?
yes.
The amount of money we print now compared to before has accelerated.
Yeah,
COVID also had an impact on that.
yeah, but maybe with
the size of our deficit from what it was before COVID is
Yeah.
broad. I mean,
But
all these.
maybe it'll get better. Maybe we can just wipe out some of the worst of the waste that the Musk is doing, right? Maybe we can just get rid of some of it.
I think you could save all $7 trillion in your of it and still not fix this problem. The problem we've got right now is that the structure is such that the rich will continue to pull away
Yes.
from the masses.
Yes, of course. Yeah, because they have money. They have the opportunity.
And then what'll happen? So this is my philosophy on this. At some point, let's say the government fails, the government falls apart.
Yeah.
The rich will still pay the poor to pay them off. They'll give them UBI, universal basic income, and they'll give them services and healthcare, and they'll give them all kinds of stuff just to keep them paid off.
Yeah, right.
And then what we're going to end up with is that'll appease them for a while, and then you'll get political groups that appeal to the masses and will cause insurrections, and then the rich will pay them off by giving them high-powered jobs and the like to pay off these. But eventually there'll be enough of those that they'll overthrow whatever economic system we've got, and then we'll restructure back to a different set of billionaires.
Okay, so here's my point. Okay, whatever. Who cares, right? So let's take this down to you and me, right? What are we going to do to eliminate us being in that bad position?
I think so. Now you go into like prepper mode.
Yeah, hello.
To me, now we're in prepper mode. I need to have 2 years supply of food. I need 6 months supply of water. I need guns. I need suddenly all these things come into play. It's like
Not necessarily, Chris.
The zombie apocalypse isn't coming. The fall.
Not necessarily. It's like, listen, you got to be in the 10% because the Democrats, as long as you're anybody in the top 10%, they're fine. They love it, right? So the key is be in the top 10%.
I think it's a smaller percentage. You got to be in this top. I think what happens is right now it's the 10%.
Okay, fine.
And then 9% of them become the middle class.
Okay, fine. Okay, whatever. Let's not argue over little details. I just want to argue that, look, we got to start going over in that direction, right? Because the flood's coming. We got to get to high ground. And maybe we're in the 10, maybe we're in 1, whatever, but.
So if you apply your critical thinking to this, what are the actions you would take to
learn the tools, right? Learn the tools.
You're just middle management at that point. You're not making the AI. You're not investing in the AI. You're not the one who's got the assets in the AI.
But Chris, that's a different level. It is. Just being good using the tool is probably enough to get me into the 10%, right? So at least I'm starting to move towards the high ground. Because kind of your logic a little bit is since I can't get into the 1%, let's not do anything. But I'm like, let's at least start climbing the mountain, right?
My objective is, my thought on this is, it's kind of fatalistic in the idea that it doesn't matter if you get in the 10%, the 1%, the society's screwed.
Yeah, see, I don't think that's necessarily true.
And that's the problem that I'm having. I need to get around is the fact that society's screwed because it's not recognizing it needs to change.
Yeah, so in that case, you just gotta let it go because you're ruminating and you're not climbing the mountain. All I know is we got to climb the mountain. Faster the better, right? Let's climb down. We can talk about all this and it's unfair and it's this and it's that, but just get climbing the mountain.
So how does this square with serving others?
What's that?
How does this square with the idea of serving others?
Who are you going to serve? I can't serve everybody. So who am I going to serve? Because I'll tell you, listen, people are, this will be a nice little short that'll get me in trouble. But people that are broke, they radically think differently. Broke people buy $80,000 trucks on credit that they can't afford. Broke people buy huge TVs that they can't afford. Broke people go out to dinner all the time. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to buy and build assets that will kick off cash. That's what rich people do, actually. And so building assets mean we got to get smarter, we got to think critically, we got to go on our walks, we got to get healthier, and we got to start businesses that will generate cash using the latest tools.
In the past,
yeah,
we built the public education system.
Yes.
And it taught people how to fit into our economy and our society.
Yeah, like an MBA.
It taught people how to work in a factory. It taught people how to do that. And they were able to earn a living doing that.
Yeah, because
and even if you were poor, if you built the right thinking about money and not spending it and saving it and all that kind of stuff, you were able to move out of the poorer classes and get into the middle class.
Yeah, right.
This was something people were able to do.
Yeah.
The problem is the systems we have to teach and train people don't give them even that level of chance anymore. Now it's all on the individual to find the opportunities on their own. And they are there. I'm not going to say they're not there. But before, you could fit into the factory model and at least come out with a middle of the road.
Yeah, you'll be okay. You'll live a nice little house.
There is no middle of the road existence anymore, is the problem.
Right.
And so what happens to the people that would have been middle of the road is they either go up or they go down.
They go down.
And I would say the bulk of them go down.
Of course,
so this is the problem that I'm talking about. And so if society no longer gives them the training they need, we need to revamp the education system. We need to teach people how to think. We need to teach people how to add value, how to look at problems and solve problems. We need to do all those things, not just be a cog in the wheel.
Well, that's what we're doing, Chris. That's why the whole point of the podcast is we're trying.
So that's what we are doing.
Hopefully. We're doing our little part, right? And maybe we may have influence on other people to say, "Oh, let me start thinking critically."
We'll start the new Department of Education for Trump.
No, actually. But we've got to change our thinking as well too, and then maybe we could have some leadership, because the more resources we have, the more capable we're helping other people.
Do you think it's possible for everyone to succeed?
Oh God, no.
Okay. Well, I just want to get that out there. So so the goal is not to get everyone to succeed. No, that's just not possible.
Some people are just not going to make the choices. They're just not going to do it, right?
I would say society requires people at the bottom.
Of course.
That's an unfortunate truth that we have to understand.
Yeah.
And that the people who can climb from the bottom, those are the people you actually want to be in the higher levels, because they will produce more.
Yeah. So I'm saying, Chris, we better climb, right? Let's climb the mountain. And it's okay to talk about it a little bit, but not too much. Because the problem is we can be talking about it and talking about it and talking about it, and the waters are going to come in and we're dead. We need to get up the mountain quickly, because now the slope is steeper than ever with AI. It used to be 18 months doubling with Moore's Law. Now it's 6 months. And who knows, it may even go to 3 months, actually.
Yeah, so they're saying 300% increase this year is what they expect.
So then what we do every single day matters. And maybe we can pull some people along with us. I'm not going to try to pull 8 million people or 8 billion people. I'm just trying to drag my fat ass up the mountain, you know?
So I think that's one thing it'd be good to figure out on our own is who we serve.
Yeah. Who do we serve? What is our purpose? What's our mission? What's our why, actually? My mission is a couple of things. My mission is a teacher. And I don't want to be a teacher, but that's what God says I'm a teacher. So I might as well try to be a good teacher, actually. So I'm trying to teach people.
I kind of think everyone who gets older should be a teacher.
Okay, fine, whatever. But I'm just talking about me, right? Just let's focus on me for a little bit. My narcissistic little mind is I need to be a teacher that maybe I can help some people climb a little bit, right? But I got to climb too. I've got to learn AI as quickly as possible, actually. I've got to fix my diabetes so I can walk around so I don't die before then.
Yep.
And it's almost like I don't even want to talk about anything other than that because I know that's the best course of action right now to take.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that you need to get into an acceptable pathway for you.
Hang on. Alexa, stop. The spy was listening. So I think that's what we got to do, Chris. We got to keep running this podcast. We got to keep focusing on AI. We got to develop a product. We start selling it to other people. And we take care of their concerns and their problems. And in exchange for that, they give us money. And there we go. That's what my course is. I just got a new customer the other day, and I'm intend to take care of their business and do a good thing for that. They're going to give me some money, and then I'm going to take that success and I can say, hey, other businesses, look what I did over here, right? Or hey, man, look what this podcast did. Would you like to do some of this? Would you like to drive some traffic? I think maybe we can help you do that.
Yeah, no,
for a small fee.
so.
And we got to make sure we're developing assets. So right now we just got to use the existing assets, but we also have to build our own. That's the whole key. Like Rich Dad, Poor Dad. You use your money to buy assets that kick off cash. That's the game.
Yeah. What are they saying? You need 7 to 9 income streams to be a millionaire today?
No, you just probably need one. You just need a good one. I don't
know. No, this is I forgot where it was saying. I've heard it repeated over and over again. Considering that the young people today are going to have a hard time getting a job that's going to be like a career for them, which is not the way that it is, that they need to actually develop multiple income streams to add up to a good
maybe
wage.
Because then the problem with that though is I don't disagree with that. The problem is it's an issue of focus and where do you put your energy.
So right? It's a totally different level of hustling, basically. Because, but I think in many ways it's preparation for a really fast changing world.
Yeah. Oh, the world accelerates.
You're running 7 businesses, even if they don't take they're not huge businesses. They pull in, I don't know, $1,000 a month or $2,000 a month. You still got to run a business.
Oh yeah, you got to run it. Yeah,
right. And so if you think about it from that aspect, it's actually a level of existence that's much higher in activity than we're used to.
Yeah. We got to accelerate. That's why we got to work out. We got to get strong. We got to get fitter. We got to think clearer. We got to think faster, in spite of how we're getting older, actually. So somehow, or even if we can't get better, we got to at least slow down the decline as much as possible, right?
So I think we need to get better. We need to do more, and then at some point we need to offload some of what we do.
There you go. Yeah, we do as much as we can with AI, and then if AI can't do it through some agents, then we do it with people, right? But our first choice
I think that's the way to do it, because that's when you really free up. What's the true power we bring to this? It's whatever vision we can bring to.
Well, from business has always been all about leverage. It's like we got to gain as much leverage as possible, right?
But what I'm saying is, I think our value is actually in goal setting and in kind of vision setting.
Okay.
But we can't do too much of that because we still have all the grunt work to do.
Yeah, we got a lot of work to do, actually. And that goes back to my point. Is like every day I'm going to wake up now and think, hey, what's the one thing I need to do today, right? What's the one thing that's going to try to move me forward? Or even in that case, at least I'm not going to go backwards. Even if I can just stay in my position, I'm still going to be okay, because so many people are going to be sliding backwards. I'll still have this relative delta between other people. Feels kind of harsh and not super nice, but
hard times.
Hard times make strong men. And Chris, if we have money,
these aren't particularly hard, but they feel like they're getting harder. So
yeah, right. So then we got to get better, right?
We're all going to have to learn to do things we don't like to do.
Yes, right. Well, yeah, we've been talking about that for over 3 hours right now.
Yeah.
Righty. Yeah.
I think we're good. We if anyone enjoyed this, they should hopefully subscribe and give us comments.
Yeah, give us some comments. Share with your friends.
We get some interesting comments.
And hey, let's make 2 invitations for people, right? Hey, if you guys want to, if you think you're cool and you're interesting, come on the podcast. Let's interview, and if you're interesting, we'll definitely have you on. And I think the
Yeah.
second immediate one would be is, hey, you're welcome to join Toastmasters. We'd love to see you in our club.
Yeah. Oh, that'd be great too. Yeah. If you want to join Toastmasters, you can reach out. We meet on Friday Pacific time, 7 a.m.
Yeah,
So it's a great group.
yeah,
But
it's a great group.
honestly, and if you want to come talk to us in this environment, you got to be open to having all your opinions questioned.
Oh my gosh, I will. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Uh, Scott and I are aligned on a lot of things, but we also like to argue with each other just for the sake of argument
That's for the fun of
sometimes.
it. Yeah, just like the
And
kids are rolling around on the ground is fun, right?
if you can accept a different viewpoint and argue it, I
Yeah,
think that's where you get the most fun out of this.
yeah.
Because then it becomes a thought experiment to try to understand a different viewpoint or thought. And I'll bet you we're getting it wrong. So if we can
Oh,
find someone with those viewpoints to correct us, that's good too.
almost certainly. Maybe we get a little right, but I think we probably got a lot wrong. And then I think for us, Chris, you and I, we need to bias towards action.
We need to bias towards action.
Let's
Yes.
not stop the thinking, right? But let's just
So, okay, Scott, let's do this then. Why don't you and I keep a diary of one action we did every day? So you're asking yourself the question at the end of the day, write down what it was that you did.
yeah.
And let's so that we can say this is the thing I did that got me further towards a specific goal.
I love that thing. Okay, so here's what I've been committed to, right? Two things tomorrow. Two things. One is I got to edit the podcast so it goes out at the right time on Sunday. And it's like my little CNC machine right over there in the corner, wherever that is. If you see it, actually, right under the flag. That thing, I'm going to put a piece of metal in that and I'm going to make something tomorrow. That's two things.
I'm sure you can go find like some, student machinist's project that you could make.
Oh, I already have a bunch of projects. Like I made this one like 2 years ago. I don't know. It's like it's a little piece of this out of bar stock, and then I like tapped it, threaded it, milled things out. But then you have to learn how to program the cam. You got to know how to design it. And they have these videos. It's called Titans of CNC. It's awesome if you check that out. It's like pretty cool actually.
Okay.
They have a free educational program. You can get in for free, and they give you the plans and they teach you how to do that.
I used to have to program those machines, so
Oh, that's awesome. Hey, that's another thing I want to talk to you about, Chris. Maybe offline, maybe online, but I just set the mill there. It hasn't been leveled, and I know that's apparently a somewhat
Yeah.
important thing to do.
extremely important thing to do.
Okay, extremely. So maybe we could talk about that at some point because I don't really know how to do it. I'm a little uncomfortable with it.
I can give you the general rundown of it. You'll need to get a higher quality level, something
I
that's
have a very precise level.
okay. Yeah,
I
and you
spent
just
like
you put it on the table, and then you level it, and it takes it. Well, it's a small machine; it probably won't take that long. But when you got big machines, it could take me 6 hours to level a machine.
oh, okay. Maybe you can walk me through the process or something.
Yeah, it'd be pretty easy for you.
That's pretty cool. Yeah.
So
Because the problem is when you do 1 foot, then this changes, and it's like, how do you control the axes individually without? Because then it's like you're just chasing your tail all over the place, So
yeah, and that's why it would take a long time. Is like because you're usually doing x-axis or y-axis,
yeah, right,
and
right.
and then making minor corrections to yeah. So we can talk about that.
Yeah, and then you got to apparently tram it with shims, and you do it from front. But there's a whole little instruction sheet. It intimidates me, and I don't want to.
Yeah, but when you're doing like an 18-ton machine and you've got like a 4 foot lever to change the bolts, I mean that's
Well, that's a different scale. This is like 1,600 pounds or something.
yeah,
like in your
that'll be good. But yeah, we can go over that.
Yeah. All right. So is that it then?
I think we're done. Again, please subscribe, comment, give us feedback. I don't know if you noticed, we are doing recordings in a different format. We're trying a new tool. Hopefully, it looks better on the final product. Comments on that as well. Did you think it was an improvement or not? Let us know.
That's awesome. That is, I love reading comments from people.
Sorry
one
for
thing
the background noise. My daughter's playing piano.
but just one thing I would just please, I'm going to beg, just please be nice, right? Please be constructive. Don't be an asshole. Please.
Unless you're from California, then
Yeah, then you're okay if you're from California.
Um,
All right, Chris. So that's it.
all right, I'll hit the stop button here.
Okay.